physical. And I think it's really, really important that we talk about it because, first of all, this was released yesterday. So this is the official result of the physical. So on April 11th, President Trump underwent his annual physical examination at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. I performed and supervised. Let me bring up Felice first. Make sure that this is working today. Good morning.
Morning.
How are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm fine. Everybody, first of all, I want everybody to thank Felice because it's 5:00 in the morning where she is. And I always feel bad about that, but she always tells me that she's down for Monday morning. So everybody love in the chat for our friend Felice. Not only will we all get smarter, we just appreciate the fact that she gives up sleep to join us. So that's pretty awesome.
Love being here. Good morning, y'all. Thank you for having me. You guys know I love your community. I love spending mornings with you, and I love facts. So let's tap the screen and get facts to 25K. I appreciate you guys so much. Good to see you.
You too. So again, the physician's name is Captain Sean Barbarella. Although he doesn't list himself as an MD, which I think is interesting, but that's that. Anyway, the vital statistics. I'm going to bring this up because I think this.
You notice he has a thing for like military doctors.
I do. Yeah. Okay. So vital statistics: age 78 years, 10 months, resting heart rate 62 beats per minute, blood pressure 128/74, pulse ox 99%, and temperature 98.6. Of course, it's perfect, but the physical also lists him at 6 feet 3 inches tall, 224 pounds. For those of you who are football fans, this is A.J. Brown, wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles, world champion Philadelphia Eagles. Any Eagle fans in the house? He is a physical specimen. Most people say he is one of the most fit athletes in the entire NFL. He is 6'1", according to NFLstats.com, 6'1", 227. You guys can be the judge. I'm just saying. The best part about the physical, though, is the summary paragraph when it says this. President Trump remains in excellent health, exhibiting robust cardiac, pulmonary, neurological, and general physical function. It's an interesting way to put that. His active lifestyle continues to contribute significantly to his well-being. President Trump's days include participation in multiple meetings, public appearances, press availability, and frequent victories in golf events. President Trump exhibits excellent cognitive and physical health and is fully fit to execute the duties of the commander-in-chief and head of state. Thoughts, Felice?
I think cheating in golf is now a sign you're in good health. I also like the part where it says, the skin examination revealed some minor sun damage. He has early melanoma. A comprehensive neurological examination revealed no abnormalities. Are you sure? But I mean, this is great news because I can help MAGA here. If your line of logic is that Trump is in perfect health, then so is Joe Biden.
Correct. Exactly.
Period.
So that if you look at the current medications, he's taking 2 drugs specifically for cholesterol control, another one for cardiac prevention, and then one for his skin condition. Again, listen, here's the picture. You guys can be the judge. This is directly from the physical, 6'3", 224. This is A.J. Brown, 6'1", 227. If any of you have ever seen A.J. Brown with his shirt off, the dude is a monster. 6'1", 227. 6'3", 224.
Well, and from seeing Trump on the street in New York, and I'm 5'9" and 3/4. I was a Division I volleyball player. I guarantee you he is not taller than 6 feet.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's 6 feet because I've seen him.
He is. I've seen him. I saw him in New York all the time. He's 6 feet tall.
Yeah, he's exactly 6 feet tall. So the reason I think that this is important for us to kind of talk about a little bit is because anything other than perfect health diminishes his image, or at least the image that he wants.
We send that doctor to El Tizecot in El Salvador. So I'm sure that's, that's literally what is happening now. So you make Trump mad, then he gets you outside of U.S. jurisdiction and they don't have to bring you back.
I'm 6'2", 227 on a good day. And so there you go. So, I mean, again, anyway, okay, so we can
How tall are you?
6'2", 227.
I didn't know that.
Yep. That's me. Okay.
I knew you were a baseball player, but not all baseball players are tall.
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting point. We had a few people on our team when I played in college that were not exactly tall. but when I entered college though, I was like 180 pounds.
This is why you should do some video standing up. I never would have thought that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, that's a really
giant tape measure.
Yeah, exactly. Because nobody would believe it. It's true. Okay, so what we're going to do today, I thought what we would do first is I do want to address the story of what happened with Josh Shapiro. For those of you who don't know, Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, his house was attacked while he by the way, happy Passover, during a Passover celebration with his family and friends. And I would just like to play the sound. This is from the presser that Josh Shapiro delivered, I think it was yesterday, in response to this, because this is a horrible story. And I just think it's important that we, first of all, we certainly know the volatility and the tinderbox that is our society. And yes, I blame Donald Trump and the manosphere, and we'll talk about the manosphere in a little bit. But I just would like you to listen to this sound because I think it's chilling when you hear about it. Okay.
Lori and I are overwhelmed by the prayers and the messages of support that we've received from all across Pennsylvania and all across the United States. We've heard from our fellow governors and first spouses. We've heard from several of the former governors of Pennsylvania. We've heard from so many friends and loved ones. And we've heard from so many caring citizens of this great Commonwealth. I want you all to know that your prayers lift us up. And in this moment of darkness, we are choosing to see light. We appreciate the light that you have shined upon us. Pennsylvania State Police, led by Colonel Christopher Parris, will brief on the specifics of what transpired. But we do know that this attack was targeted. We don't know the person's specific motive yet, but we do know a few truths. First, this type of violence is not okay. This kind of violence is becoming far too common in our society. And I don't give a damn if it's coming from one particular side or the other, directed at one particular party or another, or one particular person or another. It is not okay. And it has to stop. We have to be better than this. And we have a responsibility to all be better. Second, if this individual was trying to deter me from doing my job as your governor, rest assured I will find a way to work even harder than I was just yesterday for the good people of Pennsylvania. Here's a third truth. If he was trying to terrorize our family, our friends, the Jewish community who joined us for a Passover Seder in that room last night, hear me on this. We celebrated our faith last night proudly, and in a few hours we will celebrate our second Seder of Passover again proudly. No one will deter me or my family or any Pennsylvanian from celebrating their faith openly and proudly. I am grateful to the good people of Pennsylvania for giving me the honor to serve as their 48th governor. I will continue to pour every ounce of my being into this work. I'm going to do my best to be your governor and right now to be a good husband and father to my family, who are obviously traumatized by what occurred here last night. We are grateful to law enforcement for helping ease some of that trauma thanks to their outstanding work. They were here within seconds, and they did an extraordinary job. Local, state, and federal law enforcement partners. I now want to bring up the Colonel of the Pennsylvania State Police.
I think it's a good, appropriate place to stop. I know that there has been more information learned about how the gentleman who was accused and I think arrested and then stands charges also admitted that he would have gone after Josh Shapiro with a hammer if he had a chance to do so.
Yeah, I think they found a lot of like
from the administration addressing that.
They found a lot of, Trump said nothing. Trump said nothing about a lot of things yesterday, but they also found, they're finding his like manosphere, like hate rhetoric too, his anti-Biden rhetoric. He's a 38-year-old named Cody Vollmer from Harrisburg. Yeah. And just to be clear, I mean, this, like his whole family, his children were inside the house when he did this. And I think like I read several articles on this and, the pictures they use don't do it justice. There are pictures available. I mean, his house, like a part of his house was burned. The governor's mansion was burned, like gutted.
Yeah. I need to make a quick tech change here. Hang on 1 second. My bad.
Let's tap the screen. We're almost to 25K. Yay. I'm going to find this picture and see if I can send it to fax because it's so crazy. It's the best one I've seen of the damage. If you want to see it, I think I'm trying to remember where I found it. When I find the clip in a second. Or the pictures. Yeah, new images. Oh, it's at the Tennessee Holler account at VTN Holler. Here, fax, I'm going to send you a screenshot of these pictures.
Okay.
I don't know. Because they're,
so
yeah. And it also has his Biden supporters shouldn't exist posts. Some of that, this is a good example of the amount of hate coming. Biden supporters shouldn't exist. Where were you this first run? Well aware of that, of the trash he is. As for the second, still knew what scum he is. Now, why did y'all forget? Because what? Because he did?
That's right. And then that situation in Wisconsin is also horrible that we should talk about, where the young man unalived his parents and then
he's a neo-schmaltzy.
Exactly. Part of the money he wanted to use from whatever that he stole from his parents was going to be a plot to go after the president. Look, political violence of any kind is unacceptable. I will condemn it from sea to shining sea. And the temperature in our country has increased because of what we see every single day. And we're going to talk about the manosphere a little bit later. It's this, you can just make your own intentionally. You can think about what that might mean, the manosphere. But I think this is all related. It's young white men in particular who are in a position to act out on their violence in many, many ways. And it is incredibly dangerous. It is it is an indication of how broken our society has become when we talk about things like this. But a lot of it relates to the rhetoric that we see. This manosphere concept, and we'll get into that a little bit later, is at the front and center. And everyone who prescribes to this belief set generally aligns with conservative, air quote, conservative politics. They surround themselves with the toxic masculinity energy of MMA, UFC. They identify with people like Andrew Tate. They identify with people that's why you see the increases in enrollment in these hate groups like the Patriot Front and others. And we'll get into all that. But for any other comments on that?
Yeah, I just want to say this, and I think it's very clear, and this is coming from my history degree and noticing patterns throughout history, right? This was a very similar parallel in 1930s Germany, 1940s Germany. Violence, hate, horrific acts were absolutely legal and acceptable if they were in the name of the SS, if they were in the name of Hitler, if they were to protect Hitler. There was no amount of violence, of hate, of division, of cruelty that was not acceptable as long as you were doing it for the regime, right? And that is the exact trend we are seeing. There's no cruelty, there's no hate, there's no division, there's no act of violence that is condemnable if you do it, if it's aligned with Trump.
What was the quote? What was the Truth Social post that he put out a few weeks ago about it? As long as you're defending the nation, you're not breaking the law, or something to that effect, right? It was something along those lines. Anyway, I'm so grateful, obviously, that Josh Shapiro and his family are okay. But I think this is the first of many. We know I should say it continues. The assault on Gretchen Whitmer's home, judges being assaulted and harassed, and what we don't see from the right is condemning this level of violence. They won't.
Not even speaking about it on X. As someone who's on X making outlines and keeping my eye on the manosphere all the time.
Right.
Yeah, they're not
exactly.
They are pretending that this did not happen.
One more thing that I wanted to mention on the physical that I thought was interesting. I wanted to mention this because I think it just speaks to the bullshit that we deal with here. Let me see if I can find it. I just want to make sure I read it correctly. Hold on. Okay. Physical examination and diagnostic summary. Head, ears, nose, throat. Examination of the head, ears, nose, and throat revealed no significant abnormalities, with the exception of scarring on the right ear from a pew-pew wound. Hearing was normal. So there's that. Anyway, listen, the reality of what we saw, we talk about this every single day, and Felice knows this. We know that history doesn't repeat, but it certainly rhymes. So we see it. And unless it's a direct affront on your ideological beliefs, then it's nothing to see here. So where is the condemnation from the administration? Why have they not come out and said anything saying how horrible this is? Why? Where is it? So unless you are a simp, unless you are a Republican governor from a state and you're a Trump loyalist, you do not get condolences, right? Facts. Pelosi. Okay, what's this? Pelosi, Schumer, and Biden are all multimillionaires now. Okay, Deacon. Cool. Thanks for playing. Go sit in the corner.
That's really not smart.
Deacon,
by the way, Pelosi comes from a very famous family in San Francisco, right? Like,
that's right.
Pelosi has family money, but is also married to a man who is very rich. Like, these are simple Google searches. Biden is still not rich by any stretch of the imagination.
That's right. Exactly.
But Pelosi comes from generational wealth, and you could just Google and know that. That's just a sign that you are incapable of finding out information on your own. Yeah. When I say you are the last person to know anything, truly, in this instance, you are.
Deacon, this is for you.
Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life, son.
Thanks for playing. Appreciate you. All right. So I think what we're going to do now, and Felice and I were sort of talking about this in preparation of today's show, there is so much reporting on, well, first of all, we know that they are following the blueprint of Project 2025. Step by step by step. So many agencies, so many programs, so many executive orders that align perfectly with Project 2025. And there's actually a Project 2025 tracker, and you can see the language from Project 2025 and what the intention was and how it lines up with executive orders in this case. Also rulings by the federal judiciary. Also, Doge and Elon, and we can talk about that at some point too, because of how they've changed their reporting and as far as their numbers go. But I thought and the New York Times does a great job. Thank you for sending me that. CNN has a tracker. So I thought we could go through some of the amendments in the Constitution, because you could pick so many that are under threat. Yes, Felice, go ahead.
Oh, and I just wanted to say one more thing. If we added together the wealth of every person in Congress, no one has done more grifting while in office than Donald Trump. Just last Monday, during his latest and fourth market manipulation stunt, because I track patterns and have almost a photographic memory, so I know what's going on. Oh, I can also read. He made $415 billion. No, and I mean just on his own stock. I don't know how much $415 million just on his own stock. from his market manipulation last Monday, 1 week ago today. So if we add together everyone else's wealth, it does not equal what Donald Trump has grifted.
No, it does not even close. And actually, it's funny on that point, we can talk about China's response and how, here's the thing, before we get too far down this rabbit hole. So when you play the tough guy and you say that you're going to go after China and China's going to bend the knee, and then you impose these tariffs and China's like, we don't play, homie. We'll find business elsewhere. You remove the tariff from things like smartphones, electronics. By the way, the majority of the things that we buy from China are those things. So your tough guy stance on tariff solving all the problems was just bullshit. Anyway, we'll more.
Can I just say, since Belly in the comments told me I was yapping, I'm sorry that facts hurt your feelings. I'm sorry that a woman knowing more than you makes you feel insecure deep inside. I know it burns that my brain, on your best day, you will never be as intelligent as me. This is what we talk about when we talk about the manosphere. Deep insecurity, men gathered together in groups expressing deep insecurity and their inferiority complex that they then project onto women.
This is for Belly.
You've reached your limit on talking. Shut the fuck up.
Hope you guys could hear that okay. I have new effects that I was playing with all weekend. All right. So let's talk about the preamble, since we might as well start at the top with our Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, assure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare. I think the general welfare component is a significant thing that gets overlooked. So, Felice, let's talk about forever chemicals, shall we?
Yeah, in the preamble to the Constitution, it says promote the general welfare. Trump has now legalized forever chemicals. And I talked about this because MAGA and their tiny brains, they can't do statistical research. Like, I don't know. I, as someone who likes math and does statistical analysis, when Trump talks about deregulation, when I used to still debate before I realized I was above it on this app, I would listen to MAGA men say, he's deregulating for me. It's for small businesses. The tariffs aren't for small businesses. His deregulation has never been for small businesses. It's for huge corporations like Monsanto, right? And Forever Chemicals. Part of this deregulation is poisoning the American people.
Exactly. So as the story goes,
there's a Guardian article on this if anyone wants to look it up.
I do. I'll post it. So Trump officials quietly moved to reverse bans on toxic forever chemicals. EPA bids to change chemical risk evaluations, which could expose public to higher levels of PFAS and other pollutants. So remember, one of the true tenets, one of the foundational principles of Project 2025 was deregulation. And in fact, Trump goes on the campaign trail during his first administration and talks about how businesses have been constrained by regulations, basically giving polluters carte blanche. So as the story goes, the Trump administration is quietly carrying out a plan that aims to unalive hundreds of bans on highly toxic PFAS or forever chemicals and other dangerous compounds in consumer goods. The bans, largely at the state level, touch most facets of daily life, prohibiting everything from bisphenol in children's products to mercury in personal care products to PFAS in food, packaging, and clothing. If successful, the public would almost certainly be exposed to much higher levels of chemicals linked to a range of serious health issues such as cancer, hormone disruption, liver disease, birth defects, reproductive system damage, the plan's opponents say. The Trump Environmental Protection Agency move involves changing the way the agency carries out chemical risk evaluations, which would also preempt state laws that offer the one of few meaningful checks on toxic chemicals in consumer products. The plan could also largely undo California's...
Can I say one thing about that? Yeah, that's the most important part. This preempts. So states, governors trying to protect you from forever chemicals, like places like California, they have stricter rules around this stuff. This preempts it.
Yep. States' rights, brother.
States' rights, brother, but only if you're suppressing black and brown people from voting or chasing down black slaves that tried to run away. Then states' rights, brother. But states' rights to protect people from chemicals, nope, doesn't exist.
Yeah, so I mean, we don't have to get into the story much more, but the whole point of this is, again, a constitutional element. The foundation of our Constitution in the preamble is promote the general welfare, right? Promoting the general welfare is doing what is considered acceptable under the law, I guess. I don't know how else to phrase it, that you would just do things like not allow forever chemicals to be put back into our food. So here's the list again. The list again is a range of serious health concerns such as cancer, hormone disruption, liver disease, birth defects, reproductive system damage, the plan's opponents say. These are banned. These are banned, okay? And why? Explain to me why. Under any circumstance, would you want to have forever chemicals put back in food, food or products, whatever it might be, other than money? What's the reason?
And I can help you. The United States, everyone's like, America's the greatest country in the world, not by any measurable standards. If you can do math and statistical analysis, look at the Human Development Index. We've all ran into from time to time Tony, the billionaire that hangs around on TikTok. His last name's Boyardi. He owns the cans of, SpaghettiOs and Boyardee, whatever that stuff is. Anyways, we used to have conversations all the time about, what I can put in a can in America, you could never put anywhere else. MAGA, very few of you have ever left the country, especially when I was doing research on the SAVE Act. I now know how few Republicans even have a passport. Much fewer than liberals and progressives. And if you have never left the country, then you do not understand that we do not have food regulation. These PFAs are in our food. They're in the packaging of our food, and certain states like Maine, like Vermont, like California have tried to make rules to protect people from being poisoned. And Trump's like, correct. Nope, I'm going to make sure everyone's poisoned.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it literally makes no sense. Similarly, with when they wanted to do away with the Consumer Fraud Protection Bureau, when they want to close the doors on the CFPB, there's no other reason to do that other than to allow corruption, fraud, remove protections for consumers. In this case, one of the reasons that the UK and a lot of other countries have universal health care, because they ban certain things in food because they've made an investment in their society so their society can stay healthy. And by removing a lot of these elements in these foods, that's another way to do it. So here, we don't give a shit. We just do not care. Poisoning our kids, increase of cancer, liver disease. We've got measles outbreaks in Texas. We've got RFK doing RFK shit.
Well, don't forget the whooping cough that's spreading quickly. The pertussis is now spreading across the South. If you didn't know that. There's an epidemic of pertussis now. Louisiana, Kansas.
Can you imagine
and tuberculosis in Kansas? Kansas, watch out! It's not good. It's not looking good for you.
Yeah, can you try to imagine? Well, first of all, by the way, another little highlight from the physical: all vaccines current, which would mean he's been vaccinated for C-19. By the way, the president. Just so you know, friends. Why would, again, I'm not going to spend any more time on it because it makes me so angry. Someone whose daughter is immunocompromised by definition. When we have this assault on the medical profession, when we have the assault on basic things like trying to protect our society, that should never be a political issue. And there's going to be people on the right that are going to be cheering it because they don't know. First of all, they don't know what it is they're cheering. But the EPA allowing people to pollute, and that relates to wanting to go after hundreds of thousands of acres of forest land. Vermont is in the process of suing because we have a national forest in our state that takes up about half the state, the Green Mountain National Forest.
But Trump said there won't be fires if he chops down all the trees. Facts. Didn't you hear?
Right, that's
Trump
true.
knows best. Just like when he released those billions of gallons of water that evaporated or flooded into the ocean. And now the Central Valley farmers in California that provide the majority of our produce will not have water in the summer. Trump knows best. He decided that if you cut down all the trees, there won't be fires. I'm not joking.
And we have to I know, and we have to rake the forest floor too. Don't forget, Felice. We have to rake the forest floor. Say that 3 times fast. So these are just examples of there's no need to do these things other than to enrich. You want to make it available for the logging companies. You want more development in these areas. You've got prime real estate that exists in national parks that you want to turn into country clubs and resorts and retreats for billionaires. and the people, and oftentimes rural voters, right? Red voters, people who live in red states, who claim to be outdoorsmen and women. Some of the sanctity of protected spaces would be something that they would celebrate. And now, because they're told that by the twice impeached, 4-time indicted, sexually abusing fraudster convicted felon, that we need more lumber. So instead of just these ridiculous trade wars with Canada, so that we have to pay more for lumber, we want to go it alone and chop down some of our most prized possessions. As somebody who grew up in the woods, it's where I go when I need peace of mind. These are one of these things that just really just get to me. It might get to me more than it might get to others, but this shit drives me crazy because it's all related. It's all related. We need the forest for clean air and clean water. We need it. We have to have it. We have some of the most beautiful land on earth. If you've been to national parks, it's incredibly beautiful and it should be protected. And there's no reason to do it other than money. None. I just want to say there's a lot of people in the comments who seem to disagree with us. I mean, are you requesting to say something intelligent, or are you just saying incoherent things in the comments? I have a question for you. Why would Congress and Trump vote to make it easier for banks to charge us overdraft fees? Do you know Biden passed a rule to cap overdraft fees at $5, and conservatives, Republicans, undid that rule so that they can charge anything they want for overdraft fees. And I listened to hours of debates, which are hilarious, listening to conservatives try to genuinely say it's a good thing. It's a good thing to rob Americans. I mean, if anyone wants to give a coherent line of logic, not whining, not, muttering insecurely in the comments, but explain to me why that's better for the American people, I would love to hear it. Rodrigo, you had requested. What's on your mind today?
Hey, how are you guys doing? I was reading your info on the back there that talked about facts still matter. And I believe that is quite literally the biggest problem that we have in this country is there's way too much lying, and the lying has got to stop.
Did I lie about something?
No. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about just the media in general, discourse.
He's friendly.
Okay. Anything.
In your bio it says the left has to stop lying.
Correct. Well, mainly I should change that to left in mainstream media is one and the same for most everybody.
Well, that's not true. Not. The majority of media in our country is conservative. So that's I've worked in media for 25 years, my guy. You don't have to take my word for it. You can research it yourself.
You should say, in my opinion, I have these feelings. I am going to spew them now. That's where when you go on lives, you should start with that.
Okay. Well, I don't want to spew feelings. Like I said, I want to spew facts. So the most important thing.
But what you stated was that's not a fact, what you stated. So that would be your opinion, but that's your opinion can be refuted through the evidence.
Correct. Okay. Thank you. So
You're welcome.
With that being the case, I like to talk about facts. And I think that the most important thing, and I think that this is the side that the left doesn't see, is that the right is still very angry about the amount of propaganda that was created against Donald Trump in his first term.
Propaganda. So let's take what we like to do here is we like to take it one at a time. Okay. So you say the amount of propaganda that was created against Donald Trump the first time. So again, that would be your opinion. So what would be some of the propaganda?
The entire Russia investigation.
No, that's fact.
That's fact. So let's talk about that. So you're saying, so what propaganda as it relates to the Russia investigation?
Okay, perfect. So I love talking about facts. So what I first want to do is establish the fact of when did that be? What is the fact that I'm using as
it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter. We're talking. You made the claim that there was propaganda connected to the Russian investigation. Wait, hold on. I want you to provide evidence for Felice and I that there was propaganda connected to the Russian investigation.
Okay,
what was it?
Okay. In July of 2016, Brennan met with Obama and the team in the White House, and he told them that Hillary Clinton was getting ready to create an operative to attach Donald Trump to Russia. And she was doing that.
That is your opinion.
No. So that's a fact.
That is your opinion.
Cite a source.
No.
Okay. The source
it's not a fact. Hold on, my guy. You got to slow down. We're going to let you talk, okay? We don't. This is not the place to steamroll. If you want to do that, you can just leave. When you make a claim for something, you've got to be able to back it up. So where's your source for that? What is your source?
John Durham.
In the Durham report.
Correct.
Okay, so did you read the Durham report?
I have a question. Are you talking about are you talking about Christopher whatever his name? I mean, are you talking about the report
right? Yeah.
that was
No,
you're talking about an opposition report, right? Used.
No, incorrect. I'm talking about when the head of the CIA, John Brennan.
No, I know who John Brennan is. Okay. Please don't talk to me like I'm not smart. Actually, can I would like to just make my point. Like, here's my point. Outside of what you are saying about conversations that happened or didn't happen in the White House, which I'm largely uninterested in, I'm talking about Senate Judiciary, the CIA, the FBI, and I'm talking about bipartisan. There's a 1,000-page Senate Judiciary report, right? They had 3 different reports. The final one is 1,000 pages, a bipartisan report confirming, and here's where you need to understand, ties between the Trump campaign and Russia. And furthermore, not outside of, I mean, there's a CIA report, there's a Rolling Stone article with the man from the CIA who led the investigation and confirmed the Russian intelligence. But I would probably start with the 1,000-page Senate Judiciary report, or if you can't read, you can watch those hearings. This is indisputable fact. I'm a historical researcher. This is primary sources. Forever in the Congressional Library. It is indisputable that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia. Furthermore, they pleaded guilty to it. That is why Paul Manafort was in jail. There's over 13 indictments and guilty pleas. People were pled guilty or were convicted of these crimes. These are facts. So that's why I'm not going to get into the weeds of the conspiracies of this seems shady to me. Actually, people faced trials by a jury of their peers and went to jail. That's why Paul Manafort was in jail before illegally colluding. He worked for the Trump campaign and was colluding with Russia. And again, I would advise you, it's not just the Senate Judiciary report. There are many more hundreds and hundreds of pages report that are primary resources confirming that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia. It's indisputable.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to understand, Frank, is that you said that I'm going to go back to my initial question. What I'm trying to understand is where is the propaganda? Because the Mueller report provided all this evidence. The Durham report actually confirmed. The only thing the Durham report said that the FBI should change some of their investigative practices, but it didn't dispute anything that was in it. So where's the propaganda?
Okay, couple things. Number one, when she was just talking about that they pled guilty to working with Russia, that's completely untrue. That did not happen. They pled guilty.
I said that there was an investigation between the ties of the Russian campaign, of the Trump campaign and Russia.
Correct. And the people that pled guilty had nothing to do with that.
Yes, they did. You are absolutely wrong. You are 100% wrong. You are making things up.
Rodrigo, who's Paul Manafort?
He was Trump's first campaign head of the campaign or whatever.
Did he work with Russia?
Directly.
Okay, he directly worked with Russia. So then what you just said is not true.
No, what I just said is true. What she said is untrue. He was never charged for working with Russia. That's not why he
that's not working with Russia is not an indictment. Is not a charge. I agree with you. You keep trying to get off on technicalities. This was an investigation into ties between the Trump campaign and Russia. Paul Manafort was caught up in it and went to prison for 40. He was sentenced to prison for 43 months.
He was charged.
Stop getting in semantics debate.
Okay, he was charged and arrested for making false statements and money laundering.
Right, regarding Russia. So this is
with
from
Russia.
No.
With Russia.
Everybody, please. This is from the Mueller report. The investigation identified numerous links between the Russian government and the Trump campaign and established that the Trump campaign showed interest in WikiLeaks releases of documents and welcomed their potential to damage candidate Clinton. In 2015 and 2016, Michael Cohen pursued a hotel residence project in Moscow on behalf of Trump while he was campaigning for president. Then candidate Trump personally signed a letter of intent. Senior members of the Trump campaign, including Paul Manafort, Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner took a June 9th, 2016 meeting with Russian nationals at a Trump Tower in New York after outreach from an intermediary informed Trump Jr. that the Russians had derogatory information on Clinton. It was part of Russia and its government supported Mr. Trump. Beginning in June 2016, a Trump associate forecast to senior Trump campaign officials said that WikiLeaks would release information damaging candidate Clinton. Russian interference in 2016 was sweeping and systematic. Major attack avenues included social media, misinformation warfare campaign that favored candidate Trump, and the hacking of the Clinton campaign-related databases and release of stolen materials through Russian-created entities in WikiLeaks. Russia also targeted databases in many states related to administering elections, gaining access to information from millions of registered voters. Is that propaganda too?
Yes, it is, all of it.
Well, no, it's not.
Propaganda?
These are your, wait, can I add? I just want to add, this is also from the Mueller report. This is also from the Mueller report. This is indisputable fact. Shared in, this, wait, hold on. Guys. Shared in, these are trails of evidence. This is communications over the wires. This is wire fraud. Shared internal Trump campaign polling data with Konstantin Kilimnik, a Russian national with alleged ties to Russian intelligence. Discussed a potential Ukraine peace deal with Kilimnik that would have benefited Russian interests, had extensive business relations with Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska, which you can read these communications that had to do with the Trump campaign, to whom he was deeply indebted, attended the June 16th, exactly what Fax just said, Trump Tower meeting with Russian lawyer Natalie Veskelnitskaya and others, maintained connections with Viktor Yanukovych, the former pro-Russian president of Ukraine, and his party of regions. It is indisputable that the Trump campaign was communicating with Russia. That is what the Mueller ties from the Trump campaign, not Trump directly, the Trump campaign to Russia.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate you guys showing all that and reading all that.
Rodrigo, the problem is, my guy, is that you want to think that it is propaganda.
Can I talk, please?
Well, yeah, you can in a second, but you want to think it's propaganda. But there is all this evidence of Russian interference, all of it, in the 2016 election, in the 2020 election, in the 2024 election. But you want to think that it's propaganda. I would like you to explain why you think it's propaganda, please. Thank you.
I greatly appreciate that. The reason why I think it's propaganda is because everything that you guys are reading is the propaganda. Hold, please. And that's proven by John Durham. Here, I'm reading a CNN. Not. Hold on. Let me talk now. Let me read stuff.
It's not proven by Durham. It's actually it's not.
Special counsel John Durham concluded that the FBI should never have launched an investigation connecting Donald Trump to Russia during the 2016.
Which is exactly what I said to you earlier about John Durham. The only evidence in the Durham report was that the FBI should change their investigative practices. It does not. It is true. It does not dispute what happened. So I find it really, really interesting that you want, which confirms what I told you earlier. It was almost like an HR summary. It was almost like an HR summary.
No, he's right. Wrong. The conclusion of the Durham report was that they used uncorroborated evidence.
Exactly.
Listen, I've read every word of the Durham report. Let me just. The conclusion was they used uncorroborated evidence to open the investigation. They used because we're not going to listen to you use the word. It's not propaganda. Fax said this when he opened, so you would stop muttering this over and over. We know they used uncorroborated information to open an investigation, and separate from the Mueller report, right? There's a 1,000-page Senate Judiciary report that started their own congressional investigation, not using information from the Mueller report, and concluded the ties between the Trump campaign and Russia.
Let's use the Durham report, considering he was.
No, we're not. It said, hey, you shouldn't have opened the investigation this way.
Yes. So, Rodrigo, can you ignore? Are you willing to ignore the Senate Judiciary, the GOP-led Senate Intelligence Committee investigation that confirmed the exact same thing? So, are you honestly going to come up here and say that there was no Russian interference in any of our elections?
I never said that, and I would never claim that.
Okay, so then what's the issue?
The issue is that the Democratic Party created this propaganda that I'm telling you about, and they ran with it for years and divided the country, knowing it was all a lie.
It's not a lie.
It wasn't a lie, though. But it wasn't a lie.
So it's absolutely fact.
I'm going to try a different tack. I'm going to try. Hang on one second. I'm going to try a different tack. Rodrigo.
Let me talk.
Rodrigo. I'm going to try it. Rodrigo. I'm going to try a different tact with you. Okay. Russia interfered and it attempted to interfere and manipulated multiple elections in the United States, 2016, 2020, and 2024. Yes or no? Do you agree with that statement? Yes or no?
Is it possible that I'm right and you're wrong?
It's a yes or no question.
No, I'm a historical researcher. I absolutely know that through primary sources, this has been confirmed. It is absolutely not possible that you're right.
Uncorroborated intelligence.
Rodrigo,
no,
do you believe
through primary resource and a separate congressional investigation, all of this has been confirmed. I have other sources if you want them.
Please hang on
primary
one second, please. Hang on one second. Rodrigo, do you believe that Russia interfered with the 2016, 2020, and 2024 election? Yes or no?
I believe they interfered with all of them and probably all the previous ones. Yes.
Okay, so the investigation confirmed that, not only on the Mueller report, also reiterated in the Durham report. What the Durham report said, which is how I started the conversation, was the FBI should not have investigated as they did because the information was not corroborated. But what did we find out after, through the Senate Intelligence Committee's hearing, that yes, in fact, Russia interfered with the 2016 election and the 2020 election and the 2024 election. So I'm still trying to find out what you think is propaganda.
All of the part about connecting the Russians to Donald Trump. Every election is interfered with Russia, Russia in the U.S.
That's your opinion, though. But that's your opinion. So then why would
you just said it too? Well, no, Russia interferes with our elections every year. That's not.
I said 2016. I said 2016, 2020, and 2024. Okay, the facts have not changed. You, in fact, agreed with me. I'm still trying to find out where you think the propaganda comes from. Because if Russia if Russia did in fact interfere with our elections, where's the propaganda?
What does that have to do with Donald Trump?
Can help you. Let's get away. Let me help with another primary source.
Donald Trump Jr., Gerald Kushner, Michael Flynn, all
people that were employed by the Trump campaign.
Yeah, they were all part of the Trump campaign.
Please let me speak. Can I please?
I'm not going to let you spew misinformation, my guy. You're not saying anything.
You guys keep regurgitating the information that came before the Durham report.
No, I'm not. The Senate Judiciary report was after, and the Senate Judiciary investigation was after. Those are the primary sources. And can I also just again, please, you got to stop. You're not making any sense. But this is another, because just for people who are interested in research, since I'm a historical researcher, there's a great article on this that the Rolling Stone did. It's an exclusive. It's called "He Confirmed Russia Meddled in 2016 to Help Trump. Now He's Speaking Out." This is about one of the three that were part of the CIA that wrote that intelligence report that had built Trump's grudge against the intelligence agencies. Right? His name's Van Landingham. And I'll send this to everyone in my Discord so they can have it. But in 2017, the Intelligence Community Assessment, ICA, dubbed, quote, "Assessing Russian Activities and Intentions in Recent U.S. Elections," was one of the most consequential documents in modern history. It helped trigger investigations. These are the primary sources I'm now talking about by the House and Senate Intelligence Committees. Excuse me. I'm not finished.
You're reading about the investigation.
Let me. Okay, please stop interrupting me. You have not said anything but your feelings over and over. Now I'm explaining to you how the Senate Intelligence report came out, how they independently started an investigation after the Durham report came out. It has to do with this 2017 ICA assessment of linking members of the Trump campaign specifically. I don't want to say Trump. I want to say the Trump campaign. Right? That's what we know. People that worked for Trump were communicating with Russia. Period. Right? And then after the Durham report, separately, the Senate Judiciary started a bipartisan investigation and confirmed that in an 1,000-page report that you can read. Since then, there have been indictments of Russia trying to interfere in elections. Even this last one. People were indicted for Russians were indicted for trying to help Trump get elected. There are Yuri Shvets, look him up. He's a defected KGB agent that books have been written about, who confirmed that Trump has been cultivated as an asset by the CIA. These are primary sources since the early 80s. If you were a historical researcher, there's many ways to make these connections with primary sources. You seem unwilling to do that.
Yeah, what I'm hearing, Rodrigo, is that you want something to be propaganda, but you're ignoring all the fact that we have all this evidence. So that's the part that I'm still trying to understand. We have all this evidence. We have the reason that Donald Trump was brought into the investigation is because he obstructed justice. That was made very clear in the Mueller report and then confirmed in the Durham report. So I'm trying to understand, just because you think it's propaganda doesn't mean that it is.
Can I talk now? I've been waiting patiently for a long time.
In a second, you admitted that the Russians interfered in the election. They've admitted that they did it to benefit Trump. We've got all this historical evidence. We've got convictions. We've got confessions. We've got clear lines that we can draw. So where is the propaganda? Now, before you answer, all right, I'm not going to let you spew your opinion and claim it to be fact. If you can back, like Felice and I have done, we provided evidence. If you want to come up here and provide a source that refutes it, you can't use the Durham report because we've already talked about that. So where is it that you think that there is propaganda?
Okay, have you ever heard of the name Kevin Kleinsmith?
Kevin Kleinsmith. Yes, we have. So what's the point of Kevin Kleinsmith?
Kevin Kleinsmith is the person who altered the government document that said Carter Page was not a CIA agent when he was.
Okay,
correct?
My guy, we're talking about the evidence. Okay, you are hung up on we can agree. Like I said early on, the FBI investigated without corroborated evidence. We can agree on that. It doesn't change the fact that there are convictions and confessions and then numerous other examples of Russian interference within elections. Why can you not accept that?
So I think we should just move on from another topic, because you guys, the reason why people don't accept it is because, have you ever heard of fruit from a poisonous tree?
Of course, my guy. Have you ever heard about
these? Said a Trump supporter who pathologically lies. Let me help you about facts. You said people don't use enough facts. There's a database. Like you are logically inconsistent in a way that is literally hilarious. Do you want to talk about? Let me tell you. There's a database from Trump's first term of the times he lied. As someone who you seem to be interested in facts, you're only saying feelings. But over 30,000 times, there's a database. You can read his pathological lying, and you're talking to me about fruit from a poisonous tree. Let me help you. You just invalidated your own argument.
Can I talk for a second?
Are you going to say anything?
Ask me if I heard of fruit from a poisonous tree, and I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, it's funny because the propaganda was it's so hilarious, was just regurgitated right now live on the air here. No one ever claimed that Donald Trump lied 30,000 times. They claimed he lied or made a misleading statement. And they did that.
The database from the Washington Post are lies.
Put it on the screen and read it.
So we're not going to pivot away from this, Rodrigo. We're not going to pivot away.
Okay, I'll give you that. If you're trying to say that Trump has dementia and can't tell the truth, then that too. Fine, I'll give you that.
Hang on, everybody. Hang on, please. Thank you. Rodrigo, the issue specifically is that Russia interfered in the 2020, 2016, and 2024 elections. We know the fact. You still have not given propaganda. You made a claim that because of something that was that's your opinion that it's propaganda.
Fruit of a poisonous tree.
It's actually not. Yeah, it's an incorrect opinion.
I'm trying to explain to you, but you won't look this up. Look up Rodrigo, the July meeting with John Brennan in the White House.
Okay, and what is it? What does that imply?
I already know. I've read the Durham report. I've done debates on it.
It doesn't change the fact
of the poisonous tree starts.
No, Rodrigo, it doesn't change the fact that. Okay. It doesn't change the fact that Donald Trump obstructed justice. It doesn't change the fact that Paul Manafort, Mike Flynn, all these other people either went to jail, then, by the way, were pardoned.
Guilty and were pardoned.
Exactly. It doesn't change the fact that all these things happened. Okay. Why can you not accept that?
Hold on. It might change facts. I'm going to prove it to you. Was Carter Page a CIA informant?
We're not talking about Carter Page. We're talking about what happened.
What I'm trying to prove to you is that fact that you keep quoting.
No, let me tell you. No. Can I say something? I do know what you're talking about. I have read the Durham report. Let me just say something. What you're talking about. Look, what he's trying to say, just in fairness, which makes it has no point bearing on this argument. And let me just say, this is the problem with MAGA, and I get it because the facts are not. As a researcher, my opinions and ideas are data driven and fact driven. And when the data and facts tell me a different story, then I just change my opinions. That way, I can show my face on the internet every single day and know I'm right, because every opinion or every belief I have is backed up by data and facts. But the thing about MAGA, wait, let me just finish. I'm going to get to the Carter Page stuff. The thing about MAGA is they're defense lawyers, right? They don't have the facts on their side. They don't have the line of logic. So they cling to these. Wait, I'm not done. They cling to these like asinine things, and they repeat them over and over. But this blows up the case. Like, and why I compare them to a defense lawyer is because a defense lawyer just needs one person on the jury, right? And you poke holes. You don't have the line of logic. You don't have the sequence of events. You don't have the facts. You just kind of you offer maybe an alternate story, and then you just poke holes and say, but this one thing, but this one thing, but this one thing, and praying that one person is like, yep, that one thing, and hung jury. I get it, but outside of every point you're making independently, there's a bipartisan congressional report that confirmed this. But what he is talking about, I just want to be clear, is a FISA warrant was obtained with using an email with a guy named Carter Page, and they altered it to say like not a source versus I can't remember the exact wording to say not a source.
I get that.
No.
I'm just saying that is how acidine what he's repeating, but that's what he's talking about. If anyone wants to know, I don't like FISA warrants at all. You're the conservatives are the one that created a surveillance state. That's why you're also a hypocrite. You guys created the Patriot Act. You guys created FISA warrants. You guys are hypocrites.
Yeah. So Rodrigo, this is where I'm confused. Thank you, Felice. There is all this evidence. You've not given us anything other than your opinion on something.
I just told you that the original evidence that you guys claimed was evidence was in fact false.
Incorrect. My guy,
Kevin
listen.
Kleinsmith was charged.
Rodrigo.
He was
please
charged.
Let me finish.
He was charged.
Rodrigo.
This is why I don't debate asinine lines of logic.
Hang on one second, Felice. Hang on one second. Rodrigo. Your opinion on this is one thing, and you haven't addressed this, and I find it very convenient that you're not willing to address it, okay? We have all this evidence, not only from the Mueller report, confirmed by the Durham report, and the Senate investigation, and people who confessed, and people who were convicted. Why is it you will not engage with any of that? Why would you confess to a crime that you didn't do?
Am I allowed to speak to the point where I am allowed to bring a logical conclusion to its
No,
end?
you're going to engage with what I just said to you. Why is it that you're unwilling to engage in the fact that there is a Senate investigation that GOP led, by the way?
I'll answer it.
Wait, I'm not done. A GOP-led Senate investigation, by the way, that confirmed all this information. The Mueller report pointing to all these connections to not only obstruction by the people involved, but obstruction by the president himself. All these other details that you're unwilling to engage on. Why can't you engage on that topic? If you can't, then we're not going to get anywhere. So I'd like you to address the fact.
We're not going to get anywhere with this topic. I would really like to move it toward, because it's older, everything else. I'd really like to move it towards the topic. Then you need to take the L. So then say I was wrong. All I have is my opinions, right?
I'll say this to you. Like, I get what you're saying. Like, what you need to say is not what you're saying. You're wording it wrong. You're saying this is propaganda. None of it's propaganda. As a historical researcher,
exactly.
Well, let me just finish. Like, you're wording it wrong. What you mean to say is, because of the way this FISA warrant was obtained, or because of, uncorroborated evidence and how the FBI investigation was opened, I don't think anything involved in the Mueller report should be admissible in court. Right? That's what you mean to say, which
and it wasn't in court.
Yeah. Some people were taken to court. Wait, but my point still stands, which is irrefutable, that outside of all of that, there has been a Senate Judiciary investigation separately, not relating to anything from the Mueller report, and many other intelligence agencies as well, just so you know. After the Durham report that started their own clean investigation, brought people in under oath, and drew conclusions. It's a primary source. It's available in the Congressional Library. And then other intelligence agencies did their own reports that corroborate the same thing outside of the point you're making. But I do hear you.
Me too. So, Rodrigo, collusion, first of all, collusion's not a crime.
I appreciate you guys. Let's move on to the Hunter Biden one, because that's even more clear cut.
No,
if we want.
Not Hunter Biden's laptop.
Hang on one second. Collusion is not a crime, Rodrigo. Okay, so I know you were going to go there. I heard you say that collusion is not a crime. What I guess what I'm asking you, and I don't know if you're ever going to be able to do this, but you are living in cognitive dissonance, which means you are seeking out confirmation bias to support your opinions. So can you agree? Can you agree? And you haven't done this. I'm going to press you on this, and we're going to move on. Can you agree that there is all this evidence through investigative bodies like the GOP-led Senate and all these other sources that have provided information in support of the fact that there was, in fact, Russian interference and people went to jail and were pardoned? Can you accept that as fact?
Of course that's a fact.
Okay, so then what is the issue then?
Because those are two separate facts. You're conflating them to be one in the same.
No,
they're not.
I'm not.
But anyway,
no,
let's
I'm
move
not.
on. We're not going to agree on
conflating.
this, so we might as well just move on to a different topic.
So you're wrong.
Right. Okay,
So you're wrong.
I'm wrong.
You're wrong.
Okay, I'm wrong. So let's move on to...
Wait, are we going to move on to a different topic? You're not really
I
fun
would
to
love
debate.
to move on to the Hunter Biden topic. That's more recent. Everybody knows about it
I've
more
read
well.
every single congressional
The Hunter
every
Biden
single
topic?
page. I've read every page on Hunter Biden's crime family. So
before we do this,
I know
see how
even
legitimate
more
you are.
about how incorrect
Okay,
you
hang
are
on one
about
second.
Hunter
Hang on one second.
Biden.
Hang on one second, please. Hang on one second.
It's not about
I want to, Rodrigo, I want to level set on something. Are you able to criticize Donald Trump for anything?
Yeah, I do it all the time.
Like what? Give me an example.
I thought he had terrible communication at the beginning of the C epidemic.
Okay, so anything else?
I don't necessarily fully agree with the whole thing that he's doing now, or I would do things differently than he's doing now regarding tariffs, but I agree with the overall premise.
So you think it's okay that he wants to violate the Constitution and tear it up? You're okay with that?
Why would you assume that I'm okay with that?
I'm asking because I asked you for things that you're critical of. I'm just asking you, are you okay with those things?
Yeah, definitely not okay with that, no.
Okay, so then, but you still support him and you vote for him again?
Well, of course, I wouldn't vote for him again. He can't run again.
Would you vote for him again?
Of course I would, yeah.
Okay, so then can I, do me a solid. Just, I want to level set. Can you tell me what you had for breakfast today? Nobody fucking cares.
Thank you. I was like, I can't, even though I'm going to send everyone, because I have this great PDF made by the House.
Suffer from a lack of a father figure? Do you have clinical depression? Have you ever accidentally broken your mom's favorite coffee cup, and when she found out you did it, she tied you to a bed and spanked you with a metal spatula? If you said yes to any of these things, I don't care.
So that waste of time, and sorry, Felice, it was just hard for both of us to talk at the same time.
That was 100% a waste of time. I agree.
Yeah, so this is what you get. This is where we are now, and I think that was a necessary conversation because it shows everybody where we are now with the mega cult. They are looking to find anything that they can hold on to. So we all agreed, and I said it before the conversation started, that the Durham report showed that the FBI needed to change their investigative practices. But the Durham report also concluded the same thing that the Mueller report concluded, that there was massive amounts of Russian interference. And for a person who says that they're critical of Trump, his only response was, I gave him the opportunity to answer the question, was C-19, and I don't think I like some of this tariff stuff. But then would you vote for him even though he's violating the Constitution? Of course I would. So give me a fucking break.
Well, this is a person, which was what we were supposed to talk about before we got derailed. Donald, let me help. I'm trying to, what was that guy's name? Rodrigo. What was his profile name? I followed you, Rodrigo, by the way. Cause I might send you some information so you don't embarrass yourself with the Hunter Biden thing, which I was just going to say, I'm the most amazing PDF that has links to it. It's 7 pages and completely goes through every single argument, every single financial document, and debunks every lie about the Hunter Biden crime family. That's an easier one to debunk than what we were actually talking about. But the point is, if you want to follow the line of logic that investigation was started in the wrong way, then ipso facto, by following that line of logic, you can no longer support Donald Trump if you are not in cognitive dissonance. This is a man who has stood on the rule of law, who has taken over the DOJ, who we know has fired people, forced people, colluded with people to open investigations. I mean, we know this. So if your argument is investigations need to be opened in the right way, then your next point would be, and that's why I do not support Donald Trump. But it's not, because you're in cognitive dissonance. You're a giant hypocrite who cannot follow the line of logic. It collapsed in on itself.
What I was trying to get him to focus on was we agreed on the investigation practices. What he was afraid to accept was, well, anyway, I don't want to spend more time on it. It was a bit of a waste of time, but necessary. Okay. It's kind of the reasons we don't really do debates anymore, but I will be debating again on Wednesday night if anybody wants to come back and join us. All right. Let's see what this person has to say. Young Torso, you only got like 9 followers. All right, let's get back to, we were going through our constitutional exercise. I want to check the Dow real quick. I know at one point it was down 350 points before the opening bell. And then I think we'll have to track that. Gas prices are up again, by the way. All right. I don't want to talk about him. First Amendment. Let's talk about the First Amendment. So our exercise today is that we're going through the Constitution, specifically as it relates to the violations coming from the twice impeached, 4-time indicted, sexually abusing foster convicted felon. We have another example. Okay. So this is a Truth Social post that came down, yesterday. This morning. Almost every week, this is from Trump. Almost every week, 60 Minutes, which is being sued for billions of dollars for the fraud they committed in the 2024 presidential election with their interview of failed presidential candidate Kamala Harris, mentions the name Trump in a derogatory and defamatory way. But this weekend's broadcast tops them all. They did not one, but 2 major stories on Trump. One having to do with Ukraine, which I say is a war that would never have happened if the 2020 election had not been rigged. In other words, if I were president, and this other story was having to do with Greenland, casting our country as led by me falsely, inaccurately, and fraudulently, I am so honored to be suing 60 Minutes, CBS Fake News, and Paramount over their fraudulent, beyond recognition reporting. They did everything possible to illegally elect Kamala, including completely and corruptly changing major answers to interview questions, but it just didn't work for them. They are not a news show, but a dishonest political operative simply disguised as news, and must be responsible for what they have done and are doing. They should lose their license. Hopefully, the FCC commissions, as headed by its highly respected chairman, Brendan Carr, will oppose the maximum fines and punishment, which is substantial for their unlawful and illegal behavior. CBS is out of control at levels never seen before, and they should pay a big price for this. Make America great again. A direct assault on the First Amendment. Why don't you, if you don't mind, sort of jumping in a little bit there, Felice, I'll be right back.
Oh, are you talking about the CBS stuff?
I'm talking about just the direct violation of the First Amendment. Numerous examples, that just being another one.
Yeah, no, I need to pull this up. I have this in my, give me 1 second, y'all. I sent, and everyone in my Discord, I sent the Hunter Biden PDF. I didn't label it, but I literally just sent it to everyone that has all of the information gathered from all of testimony, everybody in those impeachment hearings and Hunter Biden that debunks any link between Biden and anything else. Let me find this because I do have it, or let me just pull up Truth Social. That's easier for me. And so I can read it and remind myself. But yeah, this is about yesterday. Trump tried to get CBS, or basically there was a 60 Minutes that happened. Yes, here we go. Almost every week, 60 Minutes, which is being sued for billions of dollars for fraud they committed in the 2024 election with their interview of the failed presidential candidate Kamala Harris, mentions the name Trump. They are mad at CBS and 60 Minutes for mentioning Trump. I don't know if you guys remember, but last Monday on the People's Receipts, which by the way is at 11:30 Pacific, 2:30 Eastern, I was playing the 60 Minutes piece that basically debunked all Trump's lies around Sukkot and El Salvador, right? And now, as a result of a piece they did yesterday, and I'm sure combined with other reporting they've done, 60 Minutes, and this Kamala Harris interview that he's obsessed with, he now wants Brendan Carr, who runs the Federal Trade Commission, to investigate, sue, and silence CBS. I mean, when I think about violations of the First Amendment and the free press and free speech, like, that is the major one for me. And this just happened yesterday.
Yeah, and this speaks. Thank you. And this speaks to one of the again, as we relate this back to Project 2025. One of the foundational elements of Project 2025 was the consolidation of federal agencies, and I've talked about this a lot about the FEC, the Federal Elections Commissions. We know they're doing that because they now want the federal government to run federal elections per state, which is against the Constitution. The Federal Trade Commission, which is part of the whole tariff bullshit that we're dealing with. Congress ultimately has the authority to step in to stop this bullshit, but the FCC in particular. We already know that they've kicked out certain journalists from the Oval Office and from the Pentagon for reporting, although the courts have stepped in to say recently that that's a violation of the First Amendment. And here we are now saying, a wink and a nod to Brandon Carr saying you should take away 60 Minutes broadcast license.
I'm sorry, and if I said FTC, I meant FCC. I might have misspoke there. I'm realizing.
Yeah,
I meant FCC. And it's Brendan Carr. Yeah, and Trump's basically instructing him because he doesn't like accurate reporting of 60 Minutes, right?
That's correct. So the reason I think this is important,
Rodrigo still loves him.
Yeah, of course, but again. Here's a great example. So the exercise that we just witnessed with that, amazing that we're the ones that were accused of this propaganda when he was exhibiting cognitive dissonance and the confirmation bias. We talk about the direct violations of the Constitution. So you have to ask yourself, MAGA supporters, you can't claim to be for the Constitution and support Donald Trump. You can't claim to be both. And we're going to go throughout the morning, we're going to go through some other examples, but I think the First Amendment protections is one we can spend a lot of time on because we know that the Justice Department, along with Donald Trump, because as in Trump's world, it's only he and Pam Bondi can determine what is legal and what's not. When you make claims to say that protests on college campuses, if they're illegal, who determines if they're illegal? It would be the people that are now saying that they are the ones that are making the laws, thus Trump, the executive branch, and the attorney general. Well, that's a direct violation of the First Amendment. Arresting people for protesting is because they may not agree with a protest is illegal. Suppressing someone's speech because you don't agree with it is illegal. Suppressing the voices of Voices of America, for example, that's been in broadcasting forever. That is the only in some parts of the world, the only way they can get news from America is through VOA. Now telling certain news agencies that you're illegal. Words matter. These are the kinds of things that are absolutely relevant for this conversation. So in Rodrigo's case, you cannot be a Trump supporter and claim to support the Constitution. You can't. It's one or the other. If you're a Trump supporter, then just say, I don't give a shit about the Constitution. I prefer monarchy. Or I support the Constitution, therefore I can't be a Trump supporter. You can't have it both ways. Thoughts, Felice?
And I just want to be, a lot of the people that have been disappeared, like people are losing student visas. And just to be helpful, because I know, MAGA, some of you have never been on a college campus. The point of college campus is to learn to critically think, right? To formulate your own opinions, right? And what has come out, which I'll talk about today on the People's Receipts, but there's no evidence against Mahmoud Khalil. When they were pressed for evidence on Friday, what Trump's lawyers said, and this is an AP article titled, "Pressed for Evidence Against Mahmoud Khalil, Government Cites Its Power to Deport People for Beliefs." Exactly. There's also a Washington Post exclusive that came out about Rumeysa Öztürk. This woman has never been to a protest. They have no evidence. She co-authored with two other people an opinion piece. Now, MAGA, let me help you. If you don't want to be hypocrites, when you show up on lives, you have to publicly speak out against Donald Trump, or you're a hypocrite. Anybody in America on U.S. soil is allowed to have an opinion.
Exactly. Okay, there's a few other examples here, and we can go through a lot of these today. And I want to talk about. I think now I want to get into this a little bit earlier because I think what we just witnessed with our guest this morning gives us a lot of time to talk about the manosphere a little bit, because I think it's relevant. So there's a great interview that was conducted by Donnie O'Sullivan, who does some reporting for CNN. He's a journalist. He's been really gaining traction in domestic news coverage, and he's speaking to a woman who only dated far right men for a year. And I think the sound is really compelling. It's only a few minutes long. I think it's worth it for all of us to listen to. I wasn't going to play this right now, but I think based on our previous conversation, I think the time is right. So this is that interview.
They have liberal friends, and they speak liberal. They have liberal friends, and then they go online, and they are a white supremacist.
This is Vera Papasova. She spent the last year dating far-right men in New York City for a story for Cosmopolitan magazine.
They're the most insecure men I've ever sat down with. It was really difficult to have some of these dates because they were so insecure, because they don't really know who they are and they don't know how to figure that out.
She said the men she dated got all their news and information from the so-called manosphere.
They did not listen to anything else. They're only listening to independent media, and they're only listening to men talking to men.
The manosphere is made up of macho podcasters and influencers.
There's no such thing as an independent female. Most women have zero concept of like money. Females don't have independent thought.
It's a space where UFC fighters are among those who reign supreme.
They love the UFC guys. They love the MMA guys because those guys do what they can. They're modern gladiators. They're badass.
Badass like Jake Shields, a former UFC star turned podcaster.
All right. Now I'm starting to feel nervous. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course.
Who I met at an MMA gym in Las Vegas.
So Jake Shields was a highly successful UFC fighter who's turned into this he's like the face of the manosphere as it relates to his now career as a podcaster.
Vegas.
Like all great MMA pros. I've never hit anyone in my life.
I'm not punching back.
This is a little bit of a boxing exercise, and I'll try to narrate. They're just wrestling around. They're just being. Donnie didn't want to get in the ring with him, but he's just showing him what's up.
Full-time pro, like in terms of.
Yeah, of course I miss it. To go from professional athlete, which is the highest of highs, to retirement.
And I guess the
podcast has helped. You could fall into depression if you just go from the most amazing career where you're famous and spotlights to all of a sudden you're a nobody.
Sure.
Like other podcasters in the manosphere, Jake regularly hosts controversial guests.
And I named the podcast Fight Back. I feel like we have to fight back what we're told we're allowed to do. I just don't like to be told you're not allowed to talk to this person. Like, why can't I talk to him? I'm not saying I agree with his ideology, but I should hear what he has to say.
He's hosted the former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan.
Today I have a very, very special guest, Dr. David Duke. I know you're controversial, but I had no idea how controversial.
And Thomas Russo, the leader of the white supremacist group Patriot Front.
I'm going to pause right there for just a second. He's talking about Thomas Russo, and I want to give you a little bit of an idea behind who Thomas Russo is. I think that might sort of help us all kind of understand a little bit more about the type of people that this gentleman interviews. Thomas Russo, when a little army of men with shields and other riot gear was spotted near a pride parade in Idaho, authorities soon linked the men to a relatively new YT nationalist group and charged them with conspiracy to riot. It is clear that us, based on the gear that the individual had with them, the stuff they had in their possession, the U-Haul with them, along with the paperwork that was seized from them, they came into downtown to riot, said the police chief in Coeur d'Alene said. Among those arrested was Thomas Ryan Russo, the leader of Patriot Front. The sheriff's office said in total, 31 people from at least 12 states were arrested and charged with conspiracy to riot. All have been released on bond. Patriot Front is a YT nationalist hate group that formed in the aftermath of the deadly Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. The rally turned deadly with the unaliving of a demonstrator. Patriot Front is a YT supremacist group whose members maintain that their ancestors conquered America and bequeathed it to them and no one else. Patriot Front justifies its ideology of hate and intolerance under the guise of preserving the ethnic and cultural origins of its members, European ancestors. So that gives you some idea who this guy is.
Let's go where we disagree a little bit.
Yes, sure.
Let's hit race, because you're a white-only group?
So the organization only allows people of American ethnicity, and all Americans, I believe, come from Europe, so they're white.
The true heirs of the American spirit fight on!
Yeah, no, I understand and talk to these guys, but I've also not brought anyone hateful. If I do, I'm going to be really on top of them.
But so he just said that he's not brought anybody on his platform that is hateful when he's interviewed David Duke and he's interviewed this guy, Thomas Rousseau.
You saying that you haven't brought someone hateful on, right? People say, well, you brought on a Grand Wizard of the KKK, you brought on Patriot Front.
Yeah.
They're hateful.
No, I think those are excellent questions, but if people go and watch the actual interviews, I think they would be like, oh, this guy's not near as hateful as if I expect it.
But Vera says hate isn't what the men she dated were really looking for.
One of these guys brought me to a political meeting.
And did they talk about politics?
Barely. They talked about, it was a bunch of men complaining about girlfriends and wives, regurgitating Andrew Tate type of advice about how to train your girlfriend, how to train your wife to be submissive. And so this group was supposed to be a political group, but they're talking about relationship problems. And the fact that that's what most of the time was spent on, you don't need to be a neo-Nazi. You need therapy.
The Appeal of Jake's podcast speaks to a need among young men in this country that Vera says can't be ignored.
You have to incentivize someone to want to be better. You can't just say, let's make men better. The thing about these guys is their biggest support system is online, but that also is very isolating, and isolation is what breeds hatred.
Groups like Patriot Front offer community, but community based on racism and hate.
People have to really think about, do you have the capacity to talk to people that you don't agree with? Because that one nice conversation you might have might change someone's day enough to not have to seek out help in an online support group, which is actually a bunch of white supremacists using political beliefs as an excuse for how they feel.
So, I play that because I think, like I said, I wasn't planning on playing that until later in the show, but I think what we witnessed from our previous guest is someone who's been red-pilled, right? Someone who has fallen into the manosphere because they connect their entire identity to Trump, unable to criticize, unable to question, unable to accept the reality and the truth, because if they do, then their entire identity crumbles around them. So this woman did this experiment, and she decided, I'm only going to date far-right men for a year. And that was her response. So the manosphere, as it's defined, I think is really fascinating. So just briefly, everybody, please keep tapping and sharing, and then we'll get back into this.
Can I say some things? Because I also find that to be sane washing. Like, I used to work with Dr. Danny a lot on the broadcast. She had research teams that tracked the manosphere. Like, that clip, I think, is interesting that she dated men in the manosphere, but the manosphere is much more dangerous, right? Like, I have this statistical analysis. Women journalists and content creators who cover gender issues received approximately 3 times more harassment than their male counterparts. Study shows 70% of women who express feminist views online report experiencing targeted harassment from the Manosphere affiliated accounts. Content analysis of Manosphere forums shows coordinated harassment, campaigns targeting specific women, real world violence. I mean, I could go around 30% of domestic violence perpetrators show engagement with the manosphere. Research shows correlation between regions with high manosphere forum activity and increased rates of domestic violence. Between 2014 and 2023, approximately 50 violent incidents linked to the manosphere ideologies resulted in about 100 fatalities, primarily women, right? Studies show approximately 25% of women in tech, I used to work in the tech industry, have experienced harassment reflecting manosphere ideology. Female academics researching gender report systemic harassment campaigns impacting their professional life. Women in male-dominant fields report increasing hostility correlating with manosphere talking points. I could go on and on about the statistical analysis. Like, she's like, oh, maybe you should go talk to someone and then that will help this. I mean, I feel like statistically, mathematically, it is much more dangerous than CNN is actually reporting on.
Absolutely. So the manosphere is a loose, informal network of blogs, forums, websites, and social media communities that focus on issues relating to men and masculinity. While the term itself might seem neutral or benign, in recent years, the manosphere has gained notoriety for promoting toxic and often extreme views about gender relations, women, and society at large. At its core, the manosphere presents itself as a space for men to discuss challenges related to their identity, but it has increasingly become associated with misogyny, resentment towards women, and harmful ideologies. The manosphere is not a singular, centralized movement, but rather an umbrella term for various subcultures that share some overlapping ideas about gender, masculinity, and men's roles in society. These groups often promote different ideologies, but they tend to converge around a few key themes: opposition to feminism, resentment towards women, and a belief that men are oppressed in contemporary society. Some of the most prominent subcultures within the manosphere include men's rights activists, or MRAs. MRAs are a key group within the manosphere that claims to advocate for men's rights, particularly in areas such as family law, domestic violence, and education. While legitimate men's issues exist, such as disparities in child custody cases or high male unaliving rates, the MRA community often downplays or outright dismisses women's issues, blaming feminism for what they perceive as men's decline in power and status. They argue that men are the true victims of gender inequality, claiming that modern society unfairly favors women. Over time, the MRA movement has become increasingly antagonistic towards women, particularly feminists, whom they accuse of seeking to dismantle traditional gender roles to the detriment of men. While there are some valid concerns in MRA spaces about issues such as paternity rights or male mental health, they are often overshadowed by anger and resentment towards women. MRAs. There's a few more. Any thoughts on that, Felice? I'm sure you have lots.
Oh, I mean, yeah, you can. I mean, as a woman, a creator, a historical researcher, and feminism, I just want to be clear, like, this is something that insecure men feel attacked by. Like, feminism, the actual definition is just about equality. It's not about taking anything from men, right? It's just about basic human rights. If you believe in basic human rights, if you believe you should have access to unalienable human rights, the feminist movement is just about everyone should, right? Just like men have unalienable human rights, so too should women. And what I find hilarious about men's rights activists is they're like, where are our safe spaces? Let me help you out there, gentlemen. It's called Western civilization. Welcome to it. This entire place is your safe space. And again, if you could do math, or something I like to call statistical analysis, then you would know that. And like I say, all my opinions are data driven. So the minute that the data bears out that you need to be protected, that your rights are in danger, then I will be right there with you fighting for them. Just like I expect men to fight for my rights. Not that I believe all of you will. I think we do have some great accomplices in here, but in general, I mean, I'm speaking now about the manosphere. But yeah, any minute the data bears out that you're losing your rights in society, I will help you.
Exactly. Don't forget about the gifting goal today, guys. Please continue to gift Felice, and please consider subscribing. FactsDon'tMatter.site. If you want to support the channel, you can do so. My Venmo, Cash App, and PayPal are all Facts Don't Matter, and Felice's information to support her are in her bio. So thank you.
I need to read a super chat real quick. Thank you so much, Filipina Zena on YouTube. Happy Monday, Facts and Felice. Everyone do something to build community and fight fascism. Tap the screen and share the live. You're the best, Filipina. Hope you had a great birthday at Disney World. Thank you guys so much. And my Cash App and Venmo is a girl has no name. Thank you guys so much for all your support. And we're almost to 250K. Keep tapping.
So another category in the manosphere is what's referred to as involuntary celibates or incels. Incels or involuntary celibates are another subculture within the manosphere that has drawn widespread criticism for its extreme and often violent rhetoric. Incels are men who feel they are unable to attract sexual or romantic partners despite wanting relationships, and they attribute this to factors beyond their control, such as their appearance or societal norms. Incels often express deep resentment towards women who they believe unfairly reject them while favoring attractive or wealthy men, often referred to as chads in their terminology.
The chads.
This resentment has led to some incels embracing extremist views, believing that women should be subjugated or even harmed for what they see as women's role in their sexual deprivation. Several mass unalivings and violent incidences have been linked to individuals who identified with the incel movement, underscoring its dangerous potential. Wow. Okay.
And you know the irony, can I just say the irony of that, the incel movement is the reason that you are feeling that way. This is created. You are being harmed by the patriarchy. And this is what you are a victim of the patriarchy, the social status in the patriarchy to punch down and marginalize people that don't meet patriarchal standards. When you say the chads, be mad at the patriarchy. If you don't like being an incel, dismantle it. Do you understand how women are judged for you don't think women are judged for our appearances? You think that we're enjoying the patriarchy and how it judges people on appearances? It's misdirected anger. Don't be mad at us. The social structure you created and are propping up inside the manosphere is what is harming you.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about how toxic masculinity and just the manosphere is incredibly harmful to women. We know that, but it's also harmful to men, which is, if you think about the rights strategy, when we listened to that interview earlier about how there's that deep connection to the UFC and to MMA and to conservative podcasts, that's by design, because that is a voting block. Young men, think about Charlie Kirk's audiences that he gets at campuses when he goes there. And then meanwhile, you get fucking Bernie going to Coachella and getting 75,000 people, which is crazy. I'm at Coachella. I thought I was here for the lunch. It's 4:00. It's early to eat. Why are there so many people? Anyway, it's by design. This is a targeted effort to influence the minds of young men so they can perpetuate misogyny, sexism, toxic masculinity for generations to come. So another category. Pickup artists, or PUAs. Pickup artists are a group within the manosphere that promotes techniques for manipulating or coercing women into schmecks. Their community, is focused on game strategies for seducing women by exploiting psychological tactics. PUAs often emphasize confidence, dominance, and manipulation, reducing women to mere objects of conquest. While the pickup artist subculture might initially seem focused on dating and seduction, the underlying principles of the movement are deeply toxic. PUAs promote a dehumanizing view of women, treating them as challenges to be overcome rather than as individuals with autonomy. Furthermore, PUA culture often encourages misogyny and emotional manipulation, as success is measured by sexual conquest, your list, and rather than mutual connection or respect.
Well, yeah, and let me just help you. Like, body count. Do you guys, and if you don't remember, like, was it early? It was probably mid 2000s. Do you remember? There was a show on VH1 called The Pickup Artist, and it was literally the beginning of this group of people where it was being glorified. Like, oh, look, we have these strategies. But in reality, if you can follow a line of logic, what they were doing essentially was denying informed consent. That is what pickup artist strategy is about. It's about there's no amount of deception, manipulation, denial of informed consent. If you don't understand what informed consent is, it means, and let me hit this with you, men, because if you want to really be, I don't know, an alpha male and get women to sleep with you, I recently had to say to someone who used to hang out with us on this app, but turns out he was one of these people. Like, you know, it's much more big of a challenge. I'm a Division I athlete. I love a challenge. I'm a competitor, but you know what's a real challenge? Divulging the entire truth about yourself, flaws and all, being completely vulnerable and then someone sleeping with you anyways. That's a real challenge. Denying someone the truth so that they can make an informed decision devalues consent. There is no consent without the truth. I just want to be clear. So when you go brag to your friends, I lied, I made up a bunch of stories, deception invalidates consent. You're not a player. You're not an alpha male. You're not someone that did something cool. You're a coward who knew if you said the truth, you couldn't get what you wanted. Informed consent is bravery. Being honest about your flaws, who you are, what you're up to, and then allowing someone to decide to sleep with you anyways. That person is a badass, right? And that's, I mean, quite honestly, you are a coward. Deception invalidates consent all day long. She wanted it. Oh, I never took anything from anyone. Absolutely you did if you deceived them. And I'm talking about civil and law, depending on the jurisdiction, criminal law now.
Absolutely. And again, I think it's the reason that I wanted to bring this up now was just because that conversation we had earlier just reminded me of the indoctrination of being red pilled and how no matter what the twice impeached, 4-time indicted, sexually abusing, fraudster, convicted felon does, there is no ability within his supporters to say anything critical, because inside the manosphere, what do other men do inside the manosphere? They protect each other, right? There's no calling that out, because if you call out, then you're outside of the manosphere and you're considered part of the problem. So that's kind of why I wanted to get into this now. So another category is MGTOW, men going their own way. MGTOW is a movement within the manosphere that advocates for men to avoid relationships with women altogether. MGTOW members believe that modern women are manipulative, untrustworthy, or only interested in men for financial gain, and they argue that men should prioritize their own interests instead of pursuing romantic relationships. What makes MGTOW particularly toxic is its absolutism. Members are encouraged to reject not just relationships with women, but often society as a whole, leading to isolation and radicalization. The community promotes a nihilistic view of gender relations where men and women are fundamentally incompatible, and any interaction with women is seen as a risk to men's emotional or financial well-being. And I'll get to more of these. Just summarize all this here, and I've got some more to talk about. This exists in right-wing circles. This is a right-wing approach to human interaction. That's the manosphere by and large, not to mean that some men don't fall into these traps, but this is a targeted group going after men on the right. This is red pilling. Thoughts on this, please?
Oh, no, I absolutely, I'm aware of this too. Yeah, I'm not even opposed of all of them. I'm like, sure, you want a separate life, cool. But I think it's ridiculous. Like, the reason that women look for financial security and all these things is because we have been devalued in society. We could not have our own lines of credit. We could not own a house without a cosigner. It's only been a few decades that we had any financial freedom. We did not create this system that you feel beholden to. You don't like that women look for financial security? We had to, because we couldn't own things on our own. It's called coverture law. Let me just help you, men, with reality. Coverture law, meaning I was not a person. I was chattel, right? I was covered by my father, which my father is a Hispanic male. Black male. He still believes this to this day. I'm unmarried, so he is I'm his property. He has to take care of me. If I ever get married, right now I'm covered by my father. That's coverture law. If I get married, then I'm covered by my husband. This is the way it was. We are chattel. We are property. We did not have the right to build finances of our own. So again, if you're upset about your financial obligations to women or taking care of your children or whatever it is, dismantle the patriarchy. Join us. That is what we are trying to do.
Because all of this is related. I mean, again, it's really important for these conversations to happen. That's why we say it's all men until it's no men. And the opportunity for us, in my opinion, I've said this before, I think white women with kids are a gettable group. When I say gettable, meaning that their young boys, their young chads are being influenced by the red pill, and their daughters are falling victim of it as well. So I'd like to think that that might be a group, if we continue to have these conversations and remind them who or what ponds they're swimming in, so to speak, that we could pull some back. Toodle, thanks for being here, friend. What's on your mind?
Hey, dobre utro. It's another fine day in the country where we colluded with that we're becoming.
Well said.
I have to, as a Delaware resident, I have to apologize for all 10 of us that live here, for both DuPont and the Forever Chemicals, as well as Hunter's laptop. So,
yes, apology accepted. We appreciate you.
There may only be 2 of us left now because of the you were talking about the First Amendment rights going away earlier with the student visas.
That too.
I think it's been shared otherwhere. I think Aaron Reichel-Melchick shared it. It was a website where you can view all throughout the country all the student visas that are being revoked throughout the states. I think last I checked it was like 750, but it's probably in the thousands by now. And I clicked on Delaware, and eight kids from the University of Delaware were revoked, and we've had literally 0 protests about Gaza, nothing controversial or anything, but they got nabbed too. But
and it's not related to that. And I'm going to play this clip on the People's Receipts later, but it's due to a program that's being it's being funded and run through the Department of Homeland Security, where they are combing the internet through AI and teams of people who are manually doing it to check everybody on a student visa. They comb through your social media history, which can be misleading, and is now the reason that this is happening. It's like kids haven't been to protests or whatever. It has to do with whatever they've ever posted on social media. And if some person's just feeling froggy and wants to violate you, then your student visa is in fact revoked.
That makes sense. I mean, for here, it could be a lot of our student visas are
or opinions online. So if you're on a student visa, think about that.
Oh, for sure.
Truly. I mean, there is an active program. The reason these visas are being revoked with no word, they are combing through anyone on student visas' social media.
We've got a huge population of the J1 visas are mostly Ukrainian students that come here, and they work the beach resorts here because I live on the beach towns here, and most of the employees that we can bring in are Ukrainian students, and they go to University of Delaware. So I bet they were, they might have said something online in support of their own country. So, but it's all an effort to get, they want to just deport as many people as possible at any cost. It's ridiculous.
Yep. Somebody just said about the next thing they'll be doing is be coming after people for their social media posts. That's already happened. We know that's already happened. I mean, people tell me, and Felice and I've talked about this. We're probably on a list somewhere for the content that we make.
I know I am, because after I saw that this weekend, I think it was Rubio had posted something about, that we deported 10 more people to CCOT. And
they did yesterday. They deported 10 more people to CCOT yesterday.
Yeah. And
with no information, no authorization still from the Supreme Court, hasn't ruled on the legality.
Nope.
But I think the most important thing to know when we talk about Abrego Garcia, and just to know, Bukele will be here today. He is the dictator of El Salvador, is going to be in the White House. He's not going to bring Kilbar Abrego Garcia with him, even though the Supreme Court said to facilitate his return. And I just want to be clear, because this is how Trump is going to not just disappear legal permanent residents, right? Like Mahmoud Khalil, whose wife's a citizen, has every right to be here. This is how he's going to disappear U.S. citizens. What they're saying is, once they get you outside of jurisdictions, no U.S. courts, not even the Supreme Court, has jurisdiction in foreign policy. No U.S. court can direct a foreign government to bring anyone back. That is the loophole that they're trying to operate under, even though there are rulings that say that should not hold snuff, right? I don't know how this will proceed, but that is the legality that Trump is trying to hold on to right now. It's outside the U.S. No U.S. court, including the Supreme Court, can get involved in foreign policy matters and bring someone back. And like, what if the lawyers arguing against this at that 9-0 Supreme Court ruling was like, well, how about this? We're paying them $6 billion effing dollars. Why don't you start by stopping payment?
You're right.
And see if you can get someone back.
Right, because Trump is now saying, contrary to his previous comments and those of various federal officials, that people removed from the U.S. to El Salvador are in the, quote, sole custody of El Salvador. His Truth Social post contradicts that. Looking forward to seeing President Bukele of El Salvador today. Our nations are working closely together to eradicate terrorist organizations and build a future of prosperity. President Bukele has graciously accepted into his nation's custody some of the most violent alien enemies of the world and, in particular, the United States. There's the tell. These barbarians are now in the sole custody of El Salvador, a proud and sovereign nation, and their future is up to President B and his government. They will never threaten or menace our citizens again.
Except they're not, because we're paying, crazy. Right? Let me tell you how sole custody of another country works. We are paying to house them, right? That's the difference. We have a financial agreement to house these people. That's what I'm saying. Deportation is dropping them off at another country and then being able to say, hey, we dropped them off there. We don't know what happened to them. This is a symbiotic relationship where we pay for space in a prison. Very different. But I'm saying that this is the legal theory, which had been developed years ago, that they're going to try to use to disappear any American citizen. Once you're outside of U.S. soil, they'll say they're in a sovereign country, even though Trump violates sovereign territory all the time. They're in a sovereign country. We can't bring them back.
Again, contradictory. U.S. citizen should not have been there. Supreme Court stepped in and said, you need to return him in this Trump administration because I think he may be no longer with us. I think that's the issue. Because you could have made an obvious plea to the president to say, President Bukele, please bring our U.S. citizen home.
Trump says.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Anytime Trump says to return that guy, he will be returned.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm wondering if Musk will be hanging around the halls because of their like relationship with Bitcoin and all the other tech bros that want to, bring their feudal states into El Salvador. I wonder if he'll be in that meeting at all. Who sees? Who knows?
Well, who knows? I mean, don't forget we have that recent interview, and I'm trying to find that sound with a member of NASA. I forget the senator that was. I think it was Ed Markey actually, who was questioning him about whether Musk was in the room during the interview.
Was Elon Musk there in the meeting? Yeah.
Can you just answer the question, yes or no? Toodle, anything else, my brother?
Yeah, it was. We got in the manosphere after that terrible man came up, and it got me thinking about like at Christmas time. Last year I was up in Boston with my brother-in-law and his best friend, who are like, they're super wrestling fans still. And I grew out of it like in 7th grade, but they're lifelongers. But they're still good people. They're not in the manosphere, but anyway, like I was talking to them, I realized like this whole, manosphere wrestling is kayfabe, the way that they present this, central casting, and it's all who's the villain. And I asked them, I was like, well, how do you break through this barrier of facts and reality into these people's brains? Because we've tried all online. Felice, you've done it so well, and facts, you do it so well too. But you're never going to break through to people like Rodrigo. And I'm like, well, how do you get through these people that are like sucked into the kayfabe? And he's like, well, The Rock. I'm like, no, he's MAGA. So it's got to be someone from within their own manosphere that has to actually, I guess, break character. I think is the only way we're gonna get. So like, it'll never happen. But like if somebody like Andrew Tate came out and changed his script,
or like John Cena, maybe, Yeah, no, I know what you're saying, but I want to say, like, this is why Trump, and if you guys don't know, one of the things Trump did other than golf, and
I don't think The Rock's mad, by the way.
Look, not 6'3", 224, or whatever he says he is, to this weekend was he flew with Elma, with Space Karen, to a UFC fight. He was at a UFC fight. And that's how he garners his control and consolidates his power of the manosphere. He hangs out at UFC fights. And actually, I mean, this is just an interesting fact because I cannot stand, what's RFK Jr.'s wife's name? Cheryl Hines? Yeah. She tried, remember when she said she was a Democrat and now she's like hawking Make America Healthy Again products and trying to rub her body against Trump. She tried to do this whole like hug Trump and he was like, get away from me, weirdo. Like, this is a manosphere event. Men don't acknowledge women. She tried to like hug Trump and he literally acted like he could not see her. Her face was so red. I was like, that's what you get, Cheryl Hines.
Totally. So I don't know how we're going to get past that manosphere. Hey, but yeah, shout out to Philip. Go out there and build community. I did that all weekend. My wife's summer camp, they're getting ready for the kids to come in, and I was out there mulching, and I'm sorry AF. One day we're gonna get everybody in this community out there to MBW Lady Tootle is the retreat director there at it's a camp run by the Episcopal Diocese, which means, the good Christians. And we can get out there and disconnect and keep building community. So thanks for having me up. Love you guys.
Tootle.
Also, I should say Zaddy Steve 6'2". Yeah.
Hey, thanks.
Oh my God. For a second, I was like, he's not 62. I get it now. Steve's tall.
Thank you, Tootle.
You can play me out to Dr. Strangelove.
Okay. All right. So back at it.
Wait, let me lead with something from Cookie really quick. Cookie said, it's about time I get Facts and Felice Mondays back. It lights my fire, tickles my brain, and sets my week off right. Love you both. Thank you so much, Cookie. I love you too. She's the best.
We love Cookie. She's the best. All right, everybody, please keep tapping and sharing. Thank you for Chris for hooking up Felice with the Galaxy. Again, if you want to support the channel, best way to do that is to subscribe. Please consider doing that at factsdomatter.site. Pay apps are above. PayPal
almost
is also
to 300K. We're doing so good today. Let's get to 300K.
So why is the manosphere considered toxic, aside from the obvious? While the manosphere initially emerged as a space for men to discuss legitimate concerns about masculinity and men's issues, it has grown into a breeding ground for extreme ideologies, hatred, and resentment. There are several key reasons why the manosphere is widely regarded as toxic. Misogyny and dehumanization of women. One of the most pervasive and concerning aspects of the manosphere is its open promotion of misogyny. Across the various subcultures, there is a consistent thread of hostility towards women who are frequently portrayed as the source of men's problems. Whether it's the incels blaming women for their lack of sexual success or MRAs accusing feminists of oppressing men, the manosphere fosters a deep resentment towards women. This misogyny often takes the form of dehumanizing language, with women reduced to objects or stereotypes. In some cases, the rhetoric within the manosphere turns violent, as seen with incels who advocate for harming women as, quote, revenge for their perceived rejection. The devaluation of women is not only harmful to women but themselves, but also perpetuates unhealthy attitudes towards relationships and intimacy among men.
I mean, listen, women can't oppress you. We have no power in Western civilization. Let me just help you out. We actually do not hold the power to oppress men. And I find this very similar to the same group of men believing that immigrants have their money. Which if you could do basic Google searches, no, the same people that have your money are oppressing you and uphold this culture of white supremacy to make you feel a little important, right? So you don't notice that you are being robbed. We are all being robbed by the same people. You can't oppress anyone without the financial or social capital to do so. It is impossible.
It's the same group of people that say that immigrants and brown and black people are taking their jobs, that the LGBTQIA community are not working, or that people are sitting in their basements not doing anything, or there's government handouts. And those same people are the ones that advocate for billionaires getting more tax cuts, advocate for people like Elon Musk, celebrating Elon Musk as he cuts veterans' jobs. It's the same group of people. I think I would imagine that there's a lot of crossover between these various groups in the manosphere. And not all Republicans are racist, but all racists seem to be Republican. I don't want to go there.
And I talk about it too. Well, Steve and I have a background in advertising, and I talk about this a lot, and like my complicity, and part of the reason I had to lead the tech industry, the manosphere, MAGA, it was essentially created by advertising buckets and an advertising pipeline on YouTube, right? That made billions and billions, if not $1 trillion. It was advertising propaganda. There are the same advertising buckets and things for women, like the yoga granola pipeline to anti-vaxxer. Like, these are known advertising pipelines that people like myself who used to work in advertising use to lead you down a path so you will watch more and more content so we can make money off you running ads. It's the most tragic thing, and part of the reason I had to leave the tech industry. If you don't understand the gamer to MAGA manosphere pipeline, it is young single males. And as they are isolated, a lot of gamer males are isolated, don't have a support group to be like, hey man, like, you're starting to watch some weird shit. And the ads they're running against him are even weirder, and we don't know what you're talking about. It's about people that don't have friends to level set and say, hey, you're developing some crazy ideas, and they just go farther and farther and farther down this pipeline while places like YouTube make as much money off them as possible, and they end up red-pilled in the manosphere or MAGA, etc.
It's so true. I mean, and how this relates to the political science realm is that, generally speaking, people don't change their voting habits. If you grow up conservative, especially men, in fact, young men are getting more and more conservative, while women are becoming more and more liberal. So specifically, as it relates to that particular voting block, once they've got them, they've got them. It's very rare, especially white men in particular, very rare do they change their voting ideology. So once they are indoctrinated into the manosphere, they're likely MAGA for life, so to speak. And it takes a lot of, deconstruction, and it takes a lot of willingness for people, unlike Rodrigo, to see their confirmation bias and their cognitive dissonance. So it's by design. Again, so I can look at this objectively from an advertising and a marketing perspective. They've been playing the long game, and it's very effective. So now they have a group of voters. They know where they are. Trump is brilliant at it. He goes on Joe Rogan. He goes to a UFC event. He goes to a NASCAR event. He's out in the public eye. He connects with those people. They have the ability to see him there. They see themselves as pick-me's. It's by design. So this all is related to the political speak that we see now. Right-wing ideology perpetuates the manosphere in today's America, and vice versa, right? Okay.
Absolutely. And someone said, well, I mean, how would you relate that? And this is I don't know. I just saw a comment that interested me, and I just want to ask how you would relate it. Someone said, I don't know if it should be but didn't women vote red? Well, yeah. I mean, which isn't mutually exclusive to what we are talking about, right?
Yeah, not a majority. If you include all women, like black women, Hispanic women.
Let's say white women for the case, this case. Yeah. And understand, right? White women have this unholy exchange with white men, right? In exchange for the protection and proximity to power, I will support your power. I will support you in your power, right? Correct. You don't abuse me, or minimally, maybe to minimize abuse. It's like fawning, right? There's flight, fight, freeze, or fawn. It's literally the fight or flight response. White women are in this permanent state. I'm not saying everyone, please. I don't need everyone to say not me, but I know not us in this live, but the majority of white women, that is the unholy exchange. Hey, if we prop up white men, they will somehow keep us safe. Maybe that power will trickle down onto us, which if we've learned any lesson, which I think is why white women were so shocked about the overturning of Roe v. Wade. They could not believe it, I agree. Because black women, brown women, indigenous women, we were like, yeah, why are you surprised? You didn't know this was coming?
If you're bothered by this statement, like we say, it's all men until it's no men. It's all white women until it's no white women. It's all white people until it's no white people. I mean, we have to have that conversation. And if you feel uncomfortable about that, then just be in your discomfort, because it's what we're talking about. Like we often say about how we're surprised when women vote against their best interests. I don't really think it's that. I think it's preservation of whiteness. I think you vote for your preservation where you sit on the hierarchy in proximity to the white men in your life, as Felice just described it, protection, whatever it might be.
I want to say this, and I don't even think preservation of whiteness, but women, let me present it to you this way. And that way you can go get your fellow white women, but also see it with a bit of empathy. It's a survival strategy.
Sure.
We are the prey gender of this species, right? It is a survival strategy. And it's very hard for me to fault any women for how they survive in this world, because I understand it. I went through a long period of fawning for survival. When I was 3 years old, there was no other way. Either I convinced the abusers around me to like me and then minimize the abuse, or I was going to die. Those were my choices. So I understand how you can be in a situation where fawning is your survival strategy. And when it's a learned behavior in childhood, in early childhood development, that is an extremely hard thing to deconstruct. But white women have in terms of the hierarchy of women in society, have the ultimate power. So, you have the resources and the brain power and the education to deconstruct. And that's what we have to encourage people to do, is see, hey, this is not a long-term survival strategy for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. I mean, think about the hate groups that are now being young by predominantly white men. You don't really see a lot of men of color in the leadership positions within those organizations. It's because it becomes a safe space perpetuated not only by the manosphere, but by white supremacy. So then women are caught up in it. And yes, it's all women until it's all white women until it's no white women. It's all white people until it's no white people. It's all men until it's no men. We've got to be willing to have those conversations, because the manosphere exists until people within it realize that what they're doing is incredibly damaging, period. And I can't speak for white women. I would like to speak to white women to say, you're part of the problem too. If you're not willing to address it, I said this last week, and it's maybe not controversial, but this is really where you're going to separate the good parents from those that are meh. Because if you're not addressing these kinds of things and having these conversations with your young men, your boys and your girls, because society tells young women that they should be gravitating towards people like Andrew Tate. That they should be riding the coattails of somebody who's going to do anything they can to be a provider and a protector so that you can sit shotgun in your Ferrari. What does that say? Don't allow yourself to be devalued. It's crazy. It's crazy.
I find our power, especially women, our superpower is our vulnerability. If you want to know how to go get other women, it's through vulnerability. Because
totally agree.
Oh my God, I'm almost going to cry. Our shared experiences of trying to survive in this world, that is our superpower. And that is a struggle that only we know. You want to appeal to someone? Like, it is not a long-term survival strategy to beg an abusive man, like, hey, if I prop you up, if I agree with you, if I vote with you, will you abuse me less? It doesn't work.
So Jen just made a great comment. Jen says, I have a hard time figuring out age-appropriate conversations with my kids on these issues. It ain't easy, but I can tell you this, the earlier you start having conversations that make you feel uncomfortable, potentially, the better they're going to be. Like, I've always believed, let's use sex education, for example. I've always been a believer and advocate for age-appropriate sex ed. When they're in nursery school, you talk about proper names for body parts, and then that leads into good touch, bad touch, and then that leads into consent. So the earlier on you are having whatever the formula is, but the earlier on you're willing to engage in these conversations, the better off your young men and your young women will be in your lives. So there's it's never too late to start. So just have the conversation.
And understand the harm if you don't, right? Because it could be awkward. And understand, just because your parents didn't talk to you about it, that was the wrong mode. Like, that's how I was essayed as a child. I was just told, if you let we don't talk about this. When I was a child, I was never touched, and I didn't know what healthy touch was. My parents never hugged me, never loved me. The only touch I had was violent. So when someone was touching me non-violently, which turned out to actually be very insidious and SA, I misunderstood that as a 3-year-old, as a 4-year-old for love. I was like, well, at least they're not hitting me. right? So that is why you have these conversations at early age. You just explain to kids, these are the parts of your body that shouldn't be touched. No one should be touching you unless you invite them to. At any moment, you can tell anybody to stop touching you. And that is your right? Like instilling in a child bodily autonomy and good touch and bad touch is the most valuable thing you can do for a child long term.
And I think it relates to the manosphere, and I think it relates to red pilling. So if you're willing to have these conversations now, or if you're willing to engage with your young men in your life, who are they being influenced by? And the reason I said earlier about how I think white women with kids in particular are a potentially a group that can be influenced politically, because it's their young boys, their Chads, their blue-eyed, blonde-haired baby boys that they're so proud of, who are falling victim to the red pill and to the manosphere, who have these harmful, hateful attitudes towards women, and their daughters who see that as alpha. So how do we stop the cycle? Conversation, communication, involvement, dedication to the most important job there is, being a parent or an educator. We better start now. It's never too late, but we better start now.
My best friend is a lawyer. She has 2 boys, and when they were like 3 and 4, they're literally only like a year and like 8 months apart. I think they were like 3 and 4, 3 and 5, and they would literally be like, I don't consent to that. Like, you could not pick these kids up. This is like, you could not come near them, or they would just say, I don't consent to that. And I was like, how great for these kids. I wish someone would have told me I didn't have to consent to things when I was being spanked in Christian school.
That's it. Yeah. Well, that's a whole different conversation, but part of the problem. All right. So reinforcement. This is another example of why the manosphere is considered toxic. Reinforcement of harmful gender stereotypes. Many communities within the manosphere promote rigid and harmful gender roles. Men are encouraged to embrace a hypermasculine ideal characterized by dominance, emotional detachment, and sexual conquest. Remember, the only 2 emotions that men are allowed to share publicly are anger and lust. Women, on the other hand, are expected to conform to traditional gender roles where they are submissive, nurturing, and dependent on men. This narrow view of gender identity can be damaging for both men and women. It reinforces outdated stereotypes that limit people's potential and perpetuates gender inequality. For men, the pressure to conform to these ideals can lead to feelings of inadequacy, especially if they don't meet the physical or emotional expectations set by the manosphere. That last sentence, society tells men to not express their emotion unless it's anger and lust. Yet, for men, the pressure to conform to these ideals can lead to feelings of inadequacy, especially if they don't meet the physical or emotional expectations set by the manosphere. The manosphere is telling young men they can only be angry, or lustful. And that's their influence. And if they show emotion, which is what we want our young men to be able to feel like they can emote. Sadness, feeling depressed, anxious, whatever that might be. The manosphere tells them that they're weak and they can't.
I can't. I am so passionate about this issue because I think the reason, in my younger years, people would always say, why are all your friends men? Well, I was raised deep in patriarchy, right? I only understood patriarchy. I'll give you something to cry about. There were no emotions in my house. They were disgusting. You could not have a feeling. So it's I was so broken that I could only relate to other men who had also been broken by the patriarchy, right? And Brene Brown talks about this. And that's why I speak about vulnerability so often. Our way back to each other is absolutely through vulnerability. And I don't think men realize this, but as someone who's read hundreds of thousands of psych papers, to understand myself, to understand what has happened to me, when men seek out sexual intimacy, that has a lot to do with, that is truly, when they're alone with a woman, is one of the only times they can be vulnerable. That's acceptable by the patriarchy. And then they can go back and tell their friends, oh, I effed her. But that is, in some men's life, the most vulnerable moments, the most intimate moments they will ever have. And like, that's why, like, some people will be like, why do so many people tell you so many things? Because I just create a safe space and I'm like, hey, tell me everything about you. Because so few men ever have a chance to emote, to express themselves. Because in the patriarchy, that is beaten out of you. It was beaten out of me. And like, our way back to all of each other is the expressing of a wide range of emotions. But understand, men, anger is an emotion. You are emotional. Exactly. If you are angry, you are emotional.
It's still emotional. Benny was mentioning in the chat that you had been red-pilled and you're talking about your journey back. I'll be right back if you guys can talk about that. Everybody, please keep tapping and sharing. Please get to our panelists. I'll be right back.
First of all, friendly neighbor from up north. How's it going, eh?
Amazing.
Great. Felice, I just wanted to say from earlier, that first guest, I'm like, damn, this is a barbecue because you're cooking. Oh, my God. You smoked that fool. Holy shit.
So I stopped debating.
Love to see it. Love to see it.
The chair, I'm tired of doing charity.
Yeah, the first one's free, right? So, yeah,
Always.
I was in my, honestly, for most of my life, from like my late teens throughout most of my 20s, I was down that conservative rabbit hole. I was super red-pilled. So talking about things like the manosphere is, that hits close to home because I too was I was in deep. And it's so crazy how just some of the videos you see, like, you're interviewing.
What prompted it?
Yeah.
Community, looking for community.
Yeah, that sense of purpose or belonging, because these red-pilled men have like such low self-worth. They have no identity. They have such deep-seated insecurities, unpacked trauma. Seriously, stuff that can be deconstructed and worked on through therapy. But going to therapy makes you weak, and in their minds, you can't seem weak at all. Otherwise, you're not part of the club. It's that
that's the acceptable emotions that, and I'm glad Felice said that. Anger is an emotion, but society tells men, especially those in the manosphere, that the only ones they're allowed to show would be anger and lust.
Yep.
Anger is you being emotional. That's why men are the most emotional beings. I had to sit in on an anger management class in college. A bunch of Division I athletes did for reasons I won't get into. An incident in the dorms. So we had to go to like a 10-hour anger management class on a Saturday. That was, I don't know, like being led by the county. And you know what it was? It was men. It was like men in their 30s who were going through divorces, who were sitting in a circle talking about how they hate women because of child support payments. And the rest we were like 18-year-olds who were like, what the hell is going on? These men are really angry. And I didn't know what I was watching at the time. I was like, oh, we were just all yelling at each other in the dorms. Like, and I had no idea what I was looking at, but it was men. Like, this is what they consider a support group.
By the way, just real quick, a True Social post from the twice impeached, 4-time indicted, sexually abusing fraudster convicted felon that came out a little while ago. The best definition of intelligence is the ability to predict the future. What? What?
Wait, what? I literally don't even understand. I need to see
the best definition of intelligence is the ability to predict the future. Okay. Anyway.
I think I lost some brain cells.
Psychics be psychicking. Yeah. So I mean, listen, I think that, I know, Benny, you've talked about your deconstruction. So it's a continued journey, right? It's for everybody, whether you're deconstructing from a cult or from religion or one and the same, or, from the patriarchy. I mean, we all have blind spots. And even though I work on it every single day, I still have blind spots. And there are still times when I could feel like I could be susceptible, but we can't change it unless we're willing to talk about it. And so for people in the chat, when I say it's all white people until it's no white people, or it's all men until it's no men, or it's all white women until it's no women, I really don't care if you're uncomfortable. I really don't. I want you to be
that discomfort because, folks that look like me or you, Steve, we got to be pulling our fucking weight, putting in the work, because that's the weight that women have been carrying for far too long. And the time for us to put the work in was honestly yesterday, but we can only do our best going forward, right?
And somebody asked in the chat, Benny, I don't know if you did this, but what was the prompt for you to start to deconstruct?
A very dear friend of mine who also happened to be a trans man was willing to have the uncomfortable conversation of being like, look, you're spreading a lot of really uncomfortable stuff. I'm honestly worried about you, and I kind of want to know what's going on. And we had a wonderful heart-to-heart, and I had a few other friends who also chimed in, and they were willing to hold that mirror up and like, look, you're not a bad person, but this is the person that you are, and it's worrying. And that was enough to be like, oh, well, shit, the glass shattered, like, oh my God. And so that was kind of where I took my first few steps. So you could say the trans community turned me woke. I'm kidding. It doesn't that doesn't matter. That just had to do with my close friendship with that person, and how much they meant to me and still mean to me. I'm still in touch with them.
Yeah.
So.
Zombified hero, the question that you asked, like, so we need to start telling red pillars that they aren't bad people. I'm not sure if that's the conversation, quite frankly. I think you have to get them to understand that they have been red pilled first and give them examples as to what that looks like. And this is why these are the people, if you don't want to be called a red pillar, then why do you associate? Why are you following Andrew Tate online? Why are you following Charlie Kirk? Why are you following these people who perpetuate these kinds of things? Disassociate from that for a little while, and then we can have this conversation as to why you are looked at negatively by society, not just by women, but just by other men too, who are like, dude, this is just not okay.
I just want to add on. I want to add on to that. Like, I don't think there's a way to do it by talking to them like specifically or as one-to-one. I've mentioned it before, where I think that when you have these conversations and you have these spaces and these communities, and you put that energy and that message out there, then those who do want to put in the work, or those who are wanting to listen, they will come. Okay, you put the energy out there, the people will come. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, let's hope so. Benny, as always, thank you, my friend. Appreciate you.
Well, and also, I think come from a place of being trauma informed. A lot of people always ask me, like, why I speak to red pill people. It's because we have a shared history. Right? Those people were raised in authoritarian households and have a highly abusive past. Sometimes the people that understand my childhood best are now red pill bros, right? I mean, they are broken. They are literally broken, and they don't understand like the way out of that. So that's what it is. I mean, I would find a shared history. I mean, I find a shared history with them. I had a very violent childhood. So like, I understand what it takes to become that way. Like, they're damaged.
I know that there's a big sort of outreach campaign that's headed up by a few people, and I know Harry and Dean have been brought into this, and Parker and Dean have been brought into this, and in an attempt to kind of push back for that generation. I would ask if any of the organizers are watching here, don't forget about older men having the ability to have some influence as well, because I've been mentoring youth, and this is not about me, but I'm saying don't forget, because we're all trying to reach out. Now, parents have influence over their children. I'm not saying every parent does. I'm not saying every parent can't. I'm saying that parents, by and large, have a lot of influence over their kids. So if you're trying to change the narrative about how we address the younger generations, Gen X in particular, a lot of them, or say Gen Z in particular, and even Gen Alpha, a lot of them are going to be red pilled. So why not include people who've got influence over them in these outreach campaigns? Why not sit people down who are willing to have these conversations to say, I get it. I've had the same conversation with my kid, and this is what I found. I would just let's not make it just generation to generation speaking. This is a systemic problem in our society that we have to fix. All voices should matter in this case. All voices. All right. Keep tapping, everybody. All right. So encouragement. This is another example of why the manosphere is considered toxic. Encouragement of isolation and radicalization. In many parts of the manosphere, particularly among MGTOW and incels, there is a strong emphasis on isolation from women and broader society. This sense of alienation can lead to further radicalization as members of these communities reinforce each other's negative views about women and relationships. The echo chambers created in these online spaces can intensify feelings of bitterness, hopelessness, and anger. For some men, participation in the manosphere leads to a downward spiral of increasing isolation, bitterness, and in extreme cases, many cases, violent tendencies. The most dangerous aspect of this isolation is that it cuts men off from healthier avenues for addressing their issues, such as therapy, meaningful friendships, or supportive relationships, instead of fostering growth or healing. The manosphere encourages men to double down on their toxic belief. So the encouragement of isolation and radicalization, again, by design, cut you off from the indoctrination, cut you off from these influences that go against the manosphere. We don't want you to be tender. We don't want you to listen. We want you to tell women that they're submissive. We want you to be able to act on your animal instincts. You need to show us that you're alpha. You need to show us that you're better than women, especially if you're white. You're better than black people, gay people, et cetera, et cetera. And if you don't, you can't be in the manosphere. Talk about a dangerous sort of cyclical view of the entire thing. That is like crazy. All right. Blaming
Can I just address something? John, in the comments, you're saying white men's voices don't matter. I think you're completely misunderstanding the conversation that's happening. This is Western civilization. The voices that hold the most weight in Western civilization, well, no, in the world globally are white males. Period. That's what we're saying. You have an awesome power. It's called the gender credibility gap. This is scientific. You can look up studies. These are scientific studies. The gender credibility gap, and then race comes into that as well. There's no more listened to voice in Western civilization than the voice of the white male. So it's absolutely the opposite of what you were implying in the comments. But I think that comes from a place of pain where you feel unheard. And I hear that. I see that, and I want you to find someone that you feel is actually listening to you. But science and statistical analysis doesn't bear that feeling out, right? But I feel your pain because I felt that way too.
I did a live a few weeks back on this topic about white men voices matter. And a lot of people that I have that are on the show regularly that are members of the BIPOC community or whatever it might be came into the live like, dude, what are you talking about? And I tried to make that exact point. The change, a system built by people who look like me to benefit people who look like me. The system will not change unless more of us on the collective are willing to attempt to try to change it. No longer can you tolerate locker room talk. No longer can you tolerate red pill behavior. No longer can you tolerate these microaggressions. You've got to be willing to call it out. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. So, John, I'm afraid
white men
I'm
can
afraid that
say
you feel
more.
that way.
Do
Exactly.
more, right? Like
go anywhere.
Matt and I were talking, USMC Angry Veteran and I were talking about this on our live, that like Matt can go into Claudia Tenney's office and scream at her and film himself doing it and being like, I'm a white male veteran and I'm going to stand here and scream at your face and tell you you're a liar. And he knows that thing's going to happen to him. Whereas a doctor, a woman, Teresa Borenpool, in a town hall in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, never got out of her seat and was just stating factual things. Everyone in the town hall was yelling, and they dragged her out of her seat, zip tied her, not police officers. A lot of people are in a lot of trouble for this, and dragged her out by her hair. So what I'm trying to say is, this is men, you do have awesome power in society. Use it for good. Like, use that power.
Use the privilege that we have. Use it. All right. Blaming feminism for men's problems. A common theme across the manosphere is belief that feminism is to blame for many of the issues that men face today. Whether it's MRAs arguing that feminism has led to the oppression of men, or incels claiming that modern women's empowerment leaves them without romantic prospects, the manosphere often portrays feminism as a harmful force. However, This perspective overlooks the real goal of feminism, which is to promote equality for all genders. The manosphere hostility towards feminism can prevent men from acknowledging the benefits of gender equality. By fostering an us versus them mentality, it discourages constructive dialogue and promotes division between men and women rather than seeking ways to address legitimate concerns that men may have in a collaborative and equitable way. I think about mental health. I think about the stigma connected to men unwilling to seek out therapy, although I've seen more and more do it. But this is a DEI argument to me, right? So DEI is because mediocre white men are afraid to compete. Mediocre white men feel like unless the deck is cleared for them, they don't want to have to compete on merit. They just want to achieve success based on their whiteness.
I agree. I mean, everyone Trump has hired and is unqualified for their position. If this was about the most qualified candidates, and I mean, I literally did an analysis and I did a live where I put every one of Trump's cabinet positions up against Biden's. They are grossly underqualified. They have a few things in common. They seem to be white men who've been credibly accused or covered up some sort of essay. It's the weirdest thing, but they're not qualified to do their job. And they've pledged direct loyalty and only loyalty, not to the Constitution, but to Donald Trump. And that's the only qualifications, right? If this is a meritocracy, then compete.
Yeah, that was our conversation we had earlier about that unwillingness to be critical, unwillingness to call anything out. Otherwise, it's a mirror concept. If I criticize him, then I'm criticizing myself. Hi, Cage. How are you today, friend?
Good morning. I'm fine. How are you and Felice today? How's everybody on the panel today?
Hey.
We're doing.
I just wanted to make 2 quick points.
Sure.
Coming from a Black family, there's more partnerships with husbands and wives due to the fact that many of our parents grew up during segregation. So there was never this sense of women's lib because my mother had to work. Her mother had to work. So that's the first point I wanted to make. So women in my family always contributed to the household. So therefore they had a huge say in how things were going. My mother's mother ended up being a single mom after so many years because my grandfather had issues. He was abusive. He drank. But my father's mother and father were married until the day my grandfather passed. The second point I wanted to make was it's interesting to me as someone who's worked in male-dominated fields, how easy it is for men to differentiate things. Case in point, I'm a chef by trade, and I remember when I used to work in kitchens, men would say women should not be in professional kitchens, and in the same breath say, oh, I hope my wife has dinner ready when I get home. So basically, there was this, it's okay for us to do it for free. It's okay for us to not be paid for our labor, but it's not.
Marx talks about this, the devaluation of female labor, right? Women work for free. Men's labor are 5-star chefs, and that is valued. That is such a great point. Marx wrote essays on this.
And I was a homeschool mom. So another thing that I thought was very interesting was as a stay-at-home mom, I was married to a Marine who grew up in a very traditional red pill type of family. That's why we're divorced. It was interesting to me how he devalued anything I did at home. And he worked in the chow hall. Now, remember, I'm a chef by trade. So he would come home and tell me, you don't know what it's like to have to do what I do at work all day. And I say, I tell you what, why don't you come home for a week? I'll do your job and you come home for a week and you do mine. Remember, I was trained to do what you do. The thing is with these guys, I read a book. Felice, I don't know if you've ever read it. Steve, I don't know if you've ever read it, but it is a great read. Why Does He Do That? Inside the Minds of Angry and Controlling Men by Dr. Lundy Bancroft. Another book is called Controlling People by Patricia Evans. Okay. The thing is, what I have found with many men is that they still believe the alpha male is true. And even the man who came up with that theory about the wolves has since recanted it and said the alpha isn't in front, he's in the back. And now these guys have grabbed onto it and they hold onto it for dear life. The biggest issue that I see for a lot of men is they are disconnected with any feelings because we all have the same feelings that they perceive as being feminine. So the lack of empathy, the lack of caring, the lack of tenderness comes from this whole, well, I'm a man, so I'm not supposed to do that. That's for women. And if she tries to make me become like this, then she's trying to weaken me. Look, fellas, I'm going to tell you the truth. The women's movement is not about you per se. It's about us being able to have the right to do things, autonomy. It's not always about just independence, but everyone wants to have a sense of being able to control their own destiny. Everyone wants to be able to self-govern to a certain extent. If you all started looking at it from the standpoint of we were your partners, not your competition, that would go a long way, because that was a big problem in my marriage. When I was married, my ex-husband didn't see me as a partner. He saw me as competition, and that was the entire marriage. And I couldn't understand it until after I got divorced. And my mother told me, she said, look, you came into the marriage with training and a college degree. He didn't. The deck was stacked against you from the start. My grandmother used to tell me, never marry a man who doesn't have the same amount or more education than you do, because it will be a problem. If that stopped being a problem, then you would see more people being able to get along. These men wouldn't feel so threatened. But in my humble opinion, and I can only speak for myself because of the marriage I was in, I feel that a lot of these red pill guys just want women they can objectify and treat like little girls, but have them do everything that their mothers did without question, without complaint, and to do it willingly and to the point of exhaustion, but still be sexy, still be available to them at bed at night, still look good, never age, don't gain any weight, don't have any stretch marks if you have my kids. This ideal of perfection is the bigger problem. And see, when I speak to men who have this issue, they sit up and say, well, a woman should do this. Well, you guys are delusional, because I had 3 kids, okay? The first one I bounced back a little bit easier because I was 26 years old. I had my next one at 30, my next one at 35. I never bounced back from that last child at 35. Never did it. Even though I worked out, I still had sagging skin. I still had stretch marks. This idea that women should not change is really the crux of the problem for many of these men. And that's my plane.
Amen. God, I love you. Don't be too fat, but don't be too skinny. Yeah. Don't be too smart, but don't be dumb. Don't wear too revealing clothes, but also don't wear nothing that makes me attracted to you. It's unattainable standards that women will never reach in society. And like Mark specifically talked about child labor. Like, it's not just that maybe your body is no longer aesthetically pleasing, but by the way, that's why I will never have children. I will not be devalued in society. And what is the value of my labor, of childbirth in America? Nothing. It is $0 and 0 cents to, and Dr. Danny talks about this all the time. It's not just about losing the looks, which devalues in society, by the way. When you lose your body or your looks, you are less valuable in society as a woman. And there are psychological and scientific studies on that we could get into. But moreover, there's maternal morbidities, right? Yeah. The toll that childbirth takes on your body, you will never be the same. You have lost exorbitant amounts of calcium, blah, blah, blah. Like, your hair won't be the same. Your teeth won't be the same. Your uterus won't be the same. Everything about your life is now different and harder. And all of that is valued at 0.
Felice, I nursed my kids, so they're hanging down to my knees because I'm top heavy. And that's another thing that people don't realize, that when you nurture your children, there's a price for that too. One of the things that I think is so important, and I'm glad you touched on this, because I have 2 daughters who said absolutely positively will never get married and have children. One of the things that I think people need to understand, and men need to get this in particular, when we have babies, everything changes. When you father babies, nothing really changes for you. The dynamics are so, I can't tell you how hard it is to be pregnant and have another child that you're taking care of at the same time. I can't tell you how hard it is to be pregnant for the first time and you're not used to being hungry all the time, having someone use your bladder as a soccer ball. You don't know what it's like. And then men have the nerve and the audacity to say, well, it's not that bad. And I always thought that it was really interesting how men would go, oh, I could handle childbirth. Really? Have you ever read what the pain decibel levels are?
Scientifically, they have lower pain tolerances. Actually, scientific studies bear out that women have much higher pain tolerances than men. So nice try, men.
So I had 2 children with no epidural, no anesthesia. And let me tell you something, it went faster, but that is the most excruciating pain you will ever go through. And I've had knee surgery.
What you were talking about, Cage, it got me thinking about the whole body count fascination that a lot of men in the right have. When they try to use body count, obviously, as despicable as it is and disgusting it is, I think it's about what you discuss, right?
Devalue women.
They don't want women who've been too used, right?
But body count increases men's value.
Yeah.
And it devalues women. That's why I've not had sex with a man in years. Why? Why? Marx explained it very perfectly. That's valued at 0 for me in society. There's no value for me having sex with a man, period.
Well, here's the thing that I think is really interesting, because Steve made a good point. This whole body count thing is a joke, because I'm sorry, I don't want a man with 1,000 women behind him either, because there's an exchange of energy as well when you are intimate. And see, the thing is, you're bringing on all these people's energy. So these men who are complaining about, I don't want a woman with a high body count. It's been scientifically proven that every time you have sex, you are absorbing somebody else's DNA. So these men who are complaining about women are absorbing all these other women's DNA and passing this on to their own offspring. They've even proven this scientifically. So the whole thing about body count is, to me, it's really a joke, because many of these men who are worried about body count don't have a high one themselves. That's why it seems to be an issue for them. Now, I have dated men who've had high body counts. And let me tell you, the difference between the men who are honest about it and the men who complain about it is the men who are upfront and honest and say, I've been with many women, they understand that, many of them, they get it. They used it. Many of them are very candid and very cavalier about it. Yeah, I go through women and this, that, and the other. But I find that the red pill guys are usually the ones who they're socially awkward. They're unattractive. And I'm not talking about looks wise. I'm talking about their personality, everything, because I have dated men before who my friends were saying, oh, he's unattractive. I'm like, but this guy is the funniest guy. He has the best personality. He's great to be around. Men are so focused on looks that they miss out on great women. Whereas we as women will date a guy who he may not be the best looking, but he makes us laugh. He's really good to us. He's kind. He's smart. He's giving. He's loving. He's caring. He's empathetic. But that's looked down on. But have you ever noticed that there are some women out there who are drop dead gorgeous and their husbands aren't much to look at? That's the reason why, because they're picking this man who treats them well as opposed to treating them like an object. Does that make sense, Steve?
It absolutely does. And I think this speaks to what we've just been talking about this manosphere, about how men within the manosphere are men in the manosphere are conditioned to see women as objects. Relationships be damned. Submissiveness is the goal. You need to be beneath me. I need to tell you what to do. So therefore, what I've done in the past is irrelevant. And I want to address something that came up real quick, Cage, too, about someone. There was a physician in the chat that addressed something specifically about absorbing DNA. I think they wanted to push back on that a little bit. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about that, but I think from a clinical perspective, I'm thinking they're saying that that's not entirely true. I think I know what you meant, but I think I want to avoid the medical terminology if we can.
Okay, no problem. I did want to say something about the men who objectify women. Now, I was married for a long time to someone who definitely objectified me. And one of the things that I think is so disheartening for women today is when you are with someone who only sees you as something to be used to take care of them, it's really a turnoff. Okay. It does not do a lot for intimacy, and it starts to make you resent your partner, because too many men feel like I'm the boss. I pay the cost to be the boss. I have a father. Okay. He was a pretty good father. I didn't want to marry one. And all too often, I think a lot of these men don't realize. I saw a young woman one time on TikTok. She made a very very succinct point, and I think Felice will agree with her point too. She said, men marry women like their mothers, but women marry men like their fathers. And the difference is men want their wives to be like their mothers, but women want their husbands to be like their fathers as a husband. You see the difference between the two?
Yeah,
I just want to speak scientifically because I get we're veering off. Like, listen, this has to do with early childhood development and trauma, right? Like how you developed as a child, how your primary attachment developed, whether you were able to attach or not attach to your primary development or your primary attachment, which is your mother, and how that played out is how you usually repeat relationships in life. You revisit that. Like, for instance, I was never able to attach to my primary attachment. I was raised by a malignant narcissist who was my mother, right? And so what I would do is either look for say, hey, if I can make this person that's exactly like my malignant narcissist, that's why I've dated so many narcissists. I would say, I'm going to manipulate this narcissist. I'm going to figure out how to make this one do what I want. And then maybe my mom will love me. So it's actually a trauma cycle. It has to do with the subconscious that we most often are repeating, right? I mean,
you were trying to fix your mother's lack of love.
I'm saying it has to do with early childhood development. Who we are is decided very, very early. That's what I'm trying to say. And it is scientific. And you can, psychology is not a science. And I want to say it's more theory, but it has to do with early childhood development.
And
Paige, thank you so much for jumping in today, my friend. I really appreciate you as always. And we'll celebrate our MBAs together. Love you, friend. Talk to you later.
Bye.
All right, bye. I think, again, I just want to wrap up this whole thing about the manosphere because we're close to the end of this here. So the harmful impact on society. The manosphere's toxic ideologies don't just harm individual men, they also have a broader societal impact. By promoting misogyny, gender stereotypes, and hostility towards feminism, the manosphere contributes to a culture that devalues women and perpetuates gender-based discrimination. The rise of online radicalization with the manosphere communities has also been linked to real-world violence, with several high-profile incidents involving individuals inspired by movement's rhetoric. We've seen some in the last 48 hours. Moreover, the manosphere fosters unhealthy attitudes about relationships, intimacy, and masculinity that can negatively affect both men and women. It encourages men to view women as adversaries rather than equals, which can hinder meaningful and fulfilling relationships. It also promotes unrealistic standards for masculinity, leading to feelings of inadequacy and frustration for men who don't fit into these rigid molds. In conclusion, the manosphere, while initially framed as a space for men to discuss issues related to masculinity, has evolved into a toxic environment that promotes misogyny, harmful gender stereotypes, and isolation. Its subculture, ranging from MRAs and incels to PUAs and MGTOWs, often foster anger, resentment, and even violence towards women. This toxicity not only damages individual relationships, but also has a broader impact on societal views about gender roles and equality. Addressing the issues raised by the manosphere requires understanding the underlying frustrations that fuel these communities while challenging the harmful narratives they promote. Encouraging healthier models of masculinity, promoting gender equality, and providing supportive spaces for men to address their concerns can help counterbalance the negative influence of the manosphere and foster a more inclusive and respectful dialogue about gender and sexuality. Easier said than done.
I think it's just about open communication at an early age. That is the goal we all have to reach.
Yeah, and again, I think that this topic is so relevant because of what we see today. The infatuation that the MMA, the PUA, the MGTOW culture has with Trump speaks to exactly what we're talking about here. It speaks to the fact that they have been red-pilled because they see someone who can violate the law as a rebel, someone who can break down democratic norms as somebody that they could idolize, someone who says, fuck the system, that they can get on board with fuck the system as well, because people that are in the manosphere have been told for decades that white men have been victimized by society. And they have their champion in someone who could care less about them. And that is the weirdest thing that will be discussed and studied forever. I'll bring up Boston Girl, then we'll jump back on things. Everybody, please continue. Let's get Felice to 5,000 coins before the show ends today.
And we're almost at
400K.
We just got to 350. You guys are doing amazing. Tap the screen.
Boston Girl, how are you today?
I'm good. Good morning. I just wanted to, being a non-mother, but I've been married for 27 years. I watch our friends, our neighbors, referring to their young boys as stud or their daughters as, oh, look how hot. I think that is also teaching them from a very young age, this is what you should be.
I actually have a lot of thoughts on this, and this is a theory I've developed recently because I am, when I say I'm an intellectual, that sounds pretentious. All I can say is I think all the time. Most of my time is spent alone. Anyone who knows me, I don't hang out with other people. I just think. And when I think, I argue both sides of things. And one of the things that took me the longest in life to really fully be able to articulate is exactly what you're talking about and why it's harmful. Like, let me help you because I get it. Like, why would positive reinforcement be bad, right? Like why would telling someone you look beautiful today? How could that in the long term be harmful for that person? Well, let me tell you how it harmed me. Like I've had a long history I'm a self-harmer, right? Like when you are traumatized in the way I have, I don't go out and traumatize other people. Well, that was in my 20s, but primarily I've never done someone more harm than I've done myself, right? And what I learned at a very young age was that when I weighed more, I was invisible. When I starved myself and I was very skinny, all of a sudden, thank you so much. I love corgis. My brother has 2 corgis. That is the coolest gift. Whoever just did that, I love you. But when I would lose weight and starve myself as a young child, all of a sudden my mother, who was a narcissist, would say, you look amazing. I love you more. I would go to school and I would get more attention. Teachers would say, you look beautiful, Felice. Everywhere around me, all of a sudden there was this positive affirmation. And what I learned from that was not eating is a good thing.
Right.
Right. And so that's why, because people can't understand why could complimenting a child be harmful? Because you don't know what place that child is in. Right. And that's why. And let me say, I'm just deconstructing this. I'm guilty of that all the time. I'll say to my friends, oh, you look so hot today. And I don't know. Maybe that person is struggling with an eating disorder. You don't know where someone's at. And if you are reinforcing something that could be harmful to them, right? Like when I don't eat, people love me more. That was the message that I received and still receive in society. So that's why, I would say where we need to all deconstruct and try to get to is just not commenting on people's bodies, even when we want to. You know what I mean? It's safer and it's healthier to just not comment on people's looks. Or let me give you an example. I know for a fact I have very long hair because when I was in 3rd grade, I cut my hair to here, and my dad, one of the worst beatings I ever got in my life. Hispanic black males, you're only allowed to have long hair. He said, you look disgusting, never cut your hair again. I learned a very hard lesson that day that I would never cut my hair again. And do you know how in society it's been reinforced to me? I love your hair. You have beautiful hair. And I know for a fact if I cut my hair, people will love me less. That was reinforced in me. Maybe my hair does look good today, but by commenting on it, you're reinforcing something in me that says the minute that I don't have hair, if something happens and I lose this, I will be less valued in society.
Yeah, Mike's Pine, my guy, you're missing the point. It's not that no compliments gotcha. It's just the compliments need to be less superficial and not just about appearance. Compliment somebody on who they are, what they do, what they accomplish. If the only compliments you're giving your kids, your daughters, that they're beautiful, then maybe you should be asking yourself where that comes from. So it's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with compliments. To Felice's point, it just needs to be, understood.
Hey, amazing impact. Job on that. You're doing such a great job. I love the way you're thinking. I love the depth of your emotion is amazing. Yeah, you're such a loving person. There's other ways to reinforce positive things other than saying, hey, your physical being, I'm reinforcing how you look like right now. Never change that or you will lose value.
Yeah. I don't necessarily, I think it's about sincerity. So when my daughter dresses up for prom, she's going to look beautiful. And I will probably say how beautiful she looks. From my perspective, though, it's about sincerity too. So it's never been just about the only compliments that I give my daughter is based on her appearance. Like, she's going to graduate in the top 5 within her class. We've been talking about that. I think I know that there's nuances to that conversation, but I think there can be elements of how we do it as long as just don't objectify, I guess. Yeah, thank you, Cage.
Well, when I see a 5-year-old,
that's kind of my perspective on it. I could be different, but again, that's just my perspective.
A 5-year-old, a parent being like, "Oh, you're such a stud." To me,
that's crazy.
That's gross.
It's crazy. Like it's the pageant culture. Why are you telling 5-year-old girls with makeup on they're hot or whatever you're doing, or beautiful? It's inappropriate. They're prepubescent. It should not matter how children look. They're not studs. They're not handsome. They're not, when she gets older, all the boys are going to be after her. Weird. Like, all of that. You're honestly like projecting into them to a time when they're going to be post puberty, and then you can, I don't know, pursue them. Yeah, it's something that people in society definitely need to think about.
Yes. Agreed.
Awesome.
Have a great day, guys.
You too. Thanks a lot. See you later.
Bye.
So again, that article that we went through is about the manosphere. I think people should be paying attention to it. I think it's really, really important that we be mindful of what's happening around us. I do want to shift a little bit because there's been some activity from the White House as it relates to the Russian strikes on the Ukrainian city of Sumy, which unalived 34 people in the deadliest attack, and the attacks have continued with drone strikes. So instead of condemning Russia, no, that would be too easy. That's what a leader would do. The president has said this: the war between Russia and Ukraine is Biden's war, not mine. I just got here, and for 4 years during my term, had no problem in preventing it from happening. President Putin and everyone else respected your president. I had nothing to do with this, in all caps. I had nothing to do with this war, but am working diligently to get the death and destruction to stop. If the 2020 presidential election was not rigged, and it was, in so many ways, that horrible war would have never happened. President Zelensky and crooked Joe Biden did an absolute horrible job in allowing this travesty to begin. There were so many ways of preventing it from ever starting, but that is the past. Now we have to get it to stop and fast. So sad. That is
Palm Sunday.
Crazy.
Palm Sunday, just in case anyone doesn't know, yesterday Putin attacked a church on Palm Sunday. Putin unalived a bunch of people in a church on Sunday. Trump spent hours not saying anything about it. I think like tens of hours. And then finally on a plane said something about it and said he didn't mean to do it. We are on, what is it now? I'm sorry. Is it day 83 of this administration? I believe it's day 83. So Trump said that he was going to end the Ukraine war on day 1. He had a plan. We are now on day 83. We are now safely in Trump territory. Oh yeah. If you don't know about this happened yesterday. I'm just talking about how ironic it is. Trump said on day 1 he would end the war in Ukraine. Yesterday, Putin bombed a church and unalived and injured hundreds of people. I mean, and injured hundreds, unalived. I don't know. The last time I counted, there's like 34, but I'm sure it's higher now. And Trump said nothing about it until late at night on his plane, and then said it's not Putin's fault.
Yeah, this is the sound.
I think it was terrible, and I was told they made a mistake, but I think it's a horrible thing. I think the whole war is a horrible thing.
I was told they made a mistake.
Putin told me he didn't mean to do it.
So
it's day 83. You said on day 1 this would be over. It's not over. You're running cover for an international war criminal who is committing war atrocities against a helpless population, and you are running cover for him. Didn't even have the guts to put 10% blanket tariffs on him. Tell me Putin doesn't have something on that man. I invite you to use basic logic.
That's exactly right. As we discussed the anti-constitution approach that the twice impeached, 4-time indicted, sexually abusing, fraudster, convicted felon is heading up in regards to the federal government, We now have an opportunity for that president to avoid the rhetoric that he gets from the left when we talk about how he's a simp for Russia. He could simply say, I condemn the assault on innocent Ukrainian civilians and citizens. Instead, his quote was, I was told they made a mistake. This is Biden's war, not mine. Unbelievable. That is unbelievable. God damn.
Nobody in America has empowered Putin more, and I'm talking about over years, than Donald Trump. Period. Nobody is more responsible for the rise of Putin and the indoctrination of the American conservative right than Donald Trump. He literally ushered it in, fostered it, encouraged it, grew it up like a little toddler. Nobody is more responsible than he is.
And echoed and perpetuated through his right-wing mainstream media, Fox, and then social media as well. So there's this famous sound, and I'm glad I found this, an interview that Sean Hannity did with Ted Koppel a few years ago, and they talk about this, about how Ted Koppel calls him out. And based on what we just read to you and the perpetuation of the fact that the president of the United States continues to spew Russian propaganda, again, I'll reiterate, the president of the United States continues to perpetuate Russian propaganda on the American citizenry. This is how the exchange went between Ted Koppel and Sean Hannity.
Give some credit to the American people that they're somewhat intelligent and that they know the difference between an opinion show and a news show.
Yeah.
You're cynical. Look at that.
I am cynical because,
You think we're bad for America? You think I'm bad for America?
Yeah.
You do.
In the long haul, I think you and all these opinion shows.
That's sad, Ted.
No, you know why?
That's sad.
Because you're very good at what you do, and because you have attracted a significantly more influential.
Let me finish the sentence.
Let me finish the sentence before you do.
With all due respect.
You have attracted people who are determined that ideology is more important than facts.
That you've attracted people that believe that ideology is more important than facts.
I mean, and you know what's funny? That this was a whole other line of logic we could have gone down with Rodrigo. Fax and I did a live, and it was a long time. It might have been 2 months ago now, where we gave all the, what people think are right-wing conservative beliefs and then link them back to Russian propaganda. Right?
Exactly.
I mean, and that's let me help you with what war is. War is not just any war, troops on the ground and bombs and drones. It is cyber war. No one is investing where the military budget is going is into cyber war. And Putin, the best war he's ever waged is cyber war. He has taken over the minds and beliefs of the conservative right, and he has done that at the behest and through Donald Trump. So you want to talk about what Trump is guilty of? I mean, that is what he is guilty of.
Every right-wing solution to poverty, hunger, health, and employment involves giving rich people more money. I just wanted to share that. There's some sound too that I have. I mean, and I'm glad you brought that up. So if anybody's ever watched my show and ever watched Felice's show, I've been talking about Russian propaganda, misinformation, disinformation, just as long as I've been doing this. And when you start to see the pieces, like you start to see, Rodrigo trying to find a way to avoid the fact that there was in fact Russian interference, trying to look for nuance, trying to find anything that they can to avoid the reality that Donald Trump is a Russian asset. A Russian asset. I have no doubt. He may not even know that he is because he's that dumb, but he is a Russian asset. He has been leveraged. He's been massaged. He's been watered. He's been, I mean, I did this entire exercise where we broke down. Team. Exactly. I mean, everything from 200 televisions sold out America and the Western world for 200 TVs. You'll know what I'm talking about. You can watch the live. We've reached a spot now where the right is so desperate to try to avoid having that conversations, they still want to revert back to Russia collusion. So you have the president standing on Air Force One or making a Truth Social post saying that it's not my war, It would not have happened if I was in the White House. And instead of being a leader, instead of saying what Russia did was unacceptable, I put pressure on the Russian government and the Ukrainians to try to solve this war, and Russia continues to violate that. They don't seem to be interested in any kind of ceasefire, blah, 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 blah. But no. Did you notice, though? Here's the subtlety. In this, President Zelensky and Crooked Joe Biden did an absolutely horrible job linking those two together, linking Biden and Zelensky together using words crooked instead of blaming Vladimir Putin, who invaded Ukraine to begin with and who just unalived 50 or more Ukrainians. Make it make sense, Felice.
Well, I'll make it make sense. There is a large and long tradition in authoritarianism, and one of the only line of logics I've noticed that they stick to, which is blame the victim. Blame the victim. The victim, I didn't want to unalive them. I didn't want to disappear them from the country, but they had a thought or an opinion. I didn't want to put them in an oven, but they made me feel insecure. That is the nature and the only consistent line of logic in authoritarianism. It is not the actual abuser. It is the victim's fault.
Exactly. That manifests in many ways. It's immigrants' fault. It's poor people's fault. It's women's fault. It's the LGBTQIA community's fault. It's everybody's fault except for the people who are actually
the enemy within. There's always got to be someone. They and that's why it's like that guy in the comments who's like, yeah, the only people whose voices don't matter are white men. No, your voices are the only ones who do matter scientifically, sir. But they've convinced him. The manosphere has convinced him. No, in fact, you're not the aggressor. You're the victim. Who do women need protection from?
Yeah, exactly.
Men. Why do we need protection from men? Because men are attacking us. It's this nature of create a problem and act like you're the savior for that problem.
Thank you to Kelly on Catch Up. Kelly says Adolescence on Netflix is relevant to our topic. Absolutely, Kelly. You're absolutely right. If anybody hasn't watched Adolescence yet, please watch it. I've not finished watching it, but I would highly recommend it. I've got a little bit of audio. Everybody, please keep tapping and sharing. Good job getting Felice to 6. Let's see if we can get her to 10. Let's get to 500K on our likes, guys. And please consider subscribing. Really want to get the subscriber count built up on factsomatter.site as we're working on doing a subscriber-only event, but we need 200 subscribers over there to do it, and we're about 50 away. Cost you $3. You can hook yourself up and get got some really cool merch that's over there now. So go get some, including my new personal favorite shirt. I read the news today. Oh boy. All right. Got some leaked audio from JD Vance as he's talking about restricting travel for women who want to get abortions. And this is older, but I think this speaks to exactly what we've been saying or what we know his feelings are in regards to women's rights to their body. This is pretty disturbing, but should not surprise anybody.
Here's the situation. Let's say Roe versus Wade is overruled. Ohio bans abortion, in 2022 or 2024. And then, every day George Soros sends a 747 to Columbus to load up disproportionately black women to get them to go have abortions in California. And of course, the left will celebrate this as a victory for diversity. That's kind of creepy, right?
Health justice is only exterminate working class black people.
Something like that could, that would be a really weird turn of events that could happen. Yes.
And it's like, if that happens, do you need some federal response to prevent it from happening? Because it's really creepy. And, I'm pretty sympathetic to that, actually.
He is sympathetic. He is sympathetic to again, states' rights, brother. He's sympathetic to penalizing women who are exercising their right to travel, by the way, which is one of our protected rights constitutionally, to go to a state outside of their own that restricts access to reproductive health care, a federal response to find them liable and convict them. Yep, that's real.
Imagine like that's what creeps you out. How about the long history of conservatives and white men throughout history sterilizing and aborting black and indigenous women's babies? Are you joking me? There are lawsuits about this. That's hilarious.
JD Vance is someone who the manosphere probably indoctrinated when he was younger, although he has changed his opinions on Donald Trump. Used to call him America's Yahtzees. But for people to want to use the states' rights arguments, now we're talking exactly states' rights, brother. Whenever Felice and I, or if she's on a live, I'll message her and say, states' rights, brother. Always gets her to smile. It's as bad as it is. We smile so we don't cry.
So you don't cry.
Exactly. For people who want to use the argument to say, hey, the states can determine women's rights to their body, you can't have it both ways. You can't say the states can determine that. Basically, what you're saying is that you're going to have Border Patrol agents at the border of Texas, and you're going to have pregnancy tests for women to cross the borders. Or not only do you get scanned for firearms at airports, now you get an ultrasound. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're implying? Because that's what it's like. So when we talk about Handmaid's Tale, sure.
I want to just talk about the facts behind this because I find it fascinating. I always talk, and when I used to work with Dr. Danny on the broadcast, we went through this report, actual scientific evidence and data, MAGA men don't like that, called Pregnancy as a Crime. And, it won't be a shock, the South is where they're charging women with crimes like, related to being pregnant. But who do you think gets charged with these crimes? Let me help you out. It's not Indigenous women. It's not Black women. Why do you think that is? That was the most fascinating part of that study to me. It's because what's in the woman's stomach is what is valuable to the people charging the crimes, right? Which in the South, that's white babies, right? So it's actually white women that get charged the most. I'm not saying Black and brown women don't, because they do. But I'm saying by and large, when you look at the reports of pregnancy as a crime, it is white women, because the value is not the person who's pregnant, it's what's inside their stomach.
Exactly. And those people who are West Wing fans, Bradley Whitford did this interview recently, and I like it because it's relevant to this particular topic, and he's been very politically active ever since leaving the show. And he was recently asked about human rights in general. This is what he had to say.
And brave. You have spoken out in it. Sometimes Hollywood doesn't love that. Sometimes it does. Tell us the importance of being brave.
It drives me insane because I've worked for all these corporations who tell me, I sit through videos telling me how much they care about, taking care of their employees. They're not speaking up when women's rights are being torn away. And that really ticks me off. I worked for Jeff Bezos, who was talking about the importance of protecting the vulnerable trans community. Then I don't hear him speaking up, protecting that community when it's used as a political football. I don't see these people speaking up, I guess, because of their financial interests. I don't know how much money you need. It reminds me of my father's riddle: who's happier, the guy with 11 kids or the guy with $11 million? It's the guy with 11 kids, because he's the only one who doesn't want more. And I'm afraid we live in a world where that simple fact shuts people up.
I really like that, because obviously, you hear the sympathetic, or an attempt at sympathetic rhetoric when you make public statements. Having both you and I have both worked in corporate America, one of the reasons I left is because I was asked to share corporate directives from leadership that were completely contradictory to what they believed. Having sit around the table with other C-suiters, like, you guys don't believe that. You expect me to tell the organization? You don't believe that. You don't want to pay for women to have to leave Texas to come to Vermont to have reproductive health care. You don't believe that, so I'm not going to lie to them. Well, it's going to be difficult to recruit otherwise. I'm like, well, then you can find somebody to fill my job, because I'm done. And for corporations to literally, for leaders, he talked about it when he had a show on Prime. Jeff Bezos used to brag about being available and supportive of marginalized groups. Where are these voices now? Where are they? Where are they? Where are the corporations that make these public statements, say that we are a safe space for marginalized communities? Where are they now? How come they're not speaking up? Well, it's because they're going to privatize the U.S. mail so that Bezos can own it. It's because they're going to privatize Social Security, make it so dysfunctional that people will complain about it and attempt to justify it. so that they can make more money off of that. Where are they? Why are they not speaking up for women's rights? Where are they? Where are they? I can tell you where they are. They're not here.
Dangerous phenomenon in society. And I think, I can't remember, I'm pretty sure it was either Robert Reich, but I want to say it was Bernie Sanders this weekend in Los Angeles who was talking about this, or it was Robert Reich. I don't know. I'll figure it out today on the People's Receipts, but was saying that it's greed, right? That's the most dangerous thing. And I think it was Bernie, and he was listing other dangers and stuff, but greed, the greed of billionaires, it is never enough. It is never enough. The consolidation of wealth and power is never enough for them. They will sacrifice the poor. They will sacrifice the middle class. They will watch people die while handing profits to shareholders and be stone-faced while doing it because of greed. It is never enough for them. And that is why it's the most dangerous thing that we have to fight.
I was in Dr. Amanda's live last Thursday night, Not a Real Doctor. She calls it Therapy Thursday. And I was debating someone one-on-one, and I was reminding him, why are you simping for billionaires? Why do we continue to prop up billionaires in our society? He's like, why? He's like, that's so crazy. Why would a billionaire want any more money? And I'm like, my guy, can you say that again to me, please? Just so I make sure I heard that properly. It's like, yeah, why would billionaires want any more money? And I'm thinking, I don't know where to even take this conversation. And very rarely am I void of words, but I didn't even know what to say to that. I'm like, okay, sure. But
why did the 500 richest people in America make $304 billion last Monday during market manipulation? That's what happened. While everyone's 401ks were being lost, when $10 trillion was disappearing, that still has not been recovered, by the way. We had billionaires making money. The top 500 richest people made $304 billion. Trump alone made $415 million just from his DJT stock. We don't know what else he made. Elon Musk made, I think it's like $38 billion, right? Yep. Tesla's stock shot up. Tesla's stock had been in the shitter, and Trump owes Elon a lot. And that's shot Tesla's stock back up.
And don't forget bragging in the Oval Office with Charles Schwab and another billionaire saying, hey, these guys made $2.5 billion today. This guy made $900 million today. These are the people that are behind the anti-women manosphere rhetoric. These are the people that are behind the dissolution of democratic norms. We haven't even gotten to what we wanted to talk about today because we didn't have to, because this is an important topic that we're discussing. These are the people that literally say that unless you are a white Christian male in society, you don't matter. You just do not matter. There's no other way to paint that picture than just with a wide white brush.
But also with capital, because you might feel important. If you're a white Christian male who's poor, you're in the same life raft as the rest of us. They just fooled you because you feel important, right? You hold societal privilege while being robbed. You're still being robbed. You just got fooled. At least the rest of us can see clearly. The rose-colored glasses aren't on. We are all being robbed by the same people. You just feel special. Congratulations. You got even more than the rest of us.
Yep. You're told you matter. You believe you claim to be on this movement of protecting children, pro-life. I'm going to just pivot real quick just to read this pro-life March for Life poem because it resonates and it's on my mind right now, and I want to get it off my chest. So please bear with me. For those participating in the March for Life, first of all, good for you. Raise your voices, express your concerns, gather, make your signs, do your thing. I won't call you names. I respect your right to do this, and I respect your conviction. Second, be clear with your cause. You don't march for life. You march for the birth of a fetus. Think about this. At what age does this life stop mattering to you? When it's in the womb, you cry for it. You fight for it. You empathize with it, and you march for it. When it becomes a month old, you hope the mother supports it, feeds it, nurtures it. However, you don't support the mother in this endeavor. You think she should work hard, pull herself up by the bootstraps, and get by at her $7.25 an hour minimum wage job. You vote for those who block legislation to protect its mother from violence, from making the same wage as men, from getting basic health care, from getting food stamps and support to care for it. When it becomes 6 years old, You hope there's a public school around to teach it. Nevertheless, you vote for those who don't want to fund public schools. You vote for those who believe our schools are flush with cash, yet somehow failing. The wealthier kids that live by it are able to go to different schools, but this fetus is stuck in an overcrowded, underfunded public school, so it falls behind in reading and in math. You feel bad for it, but you don't march for it. You mostly blame its single mother for not doing more to be involved in its schooling. She should do homework with it. She should read to it more. Maybe she should get it a tutor. Nonetheless, she works 2 jobs, but she's barely getting by. Now it's 14 years old. It just had its first experience with a boy. It's not sure if it was safe with this boy, and it thinks it needs to go to see a doctor. However, it's scared and it's embarrassed, and it doesn't want to get in trouble with mom. Therefore, it looks for a Planned Parenthood in its area, but they've all been shut down. But you feel no sympathy for it anymore. It's now a slut to you. It should have made better choices been more Christian. It's no longer worthy of your support, and you do not march for it. Because you're not marching for life, you're marching for religion and righteousness and oppressing women with your outdated views of how they should behave. Therefore, it gets no prenatal care. It goes on living for the next 3 months wearing baggy sweatshirts and hoping no one notices. When its mom finally does notice, she tells it to get an abortion because they don't have the money to support another it. And because it is still a child trying to go to school and have a life, again, you don't march for this life. You voted to make abortion illegal and you feel good. You feel right with God because you saved another fetus. This time it was given up for adoption. It joins more than 400,000 children in the U.S. foster care system. If it's lucky, it will only spend an average 3 years in foster care. If it's lucky, it won't fall into the 78% of foster care children whom experience some form of abuse. If it's lucky, it won't be one of the 80% of imprisoned people who spent some time in the foster care system. If it's lucky, it'll be one of the 50% of foster kids that graduate high school by the age of 18. If it's lucky, it'll be one of the 9% of former foster care kids that earn a bachelor's degree. If it's lucky, it'll be adopted before it turns 18 and is thrown out into the streets to fend for itself. However, you don't march for those lives. Now it's 18. It jumped from foster home to foster home to foster home. Doesn't have a family. It's depressed, emotionally damaged, and needs help. It could use some health care, but obviously can't afford it. It could use a job, but has no clothes and nowhere to stay. You avoid it on the streets, taking the long route to your car, hoping it doesn't stop you to ask for some change. You wish it would go somewhere else, anywhere but your neighborhood. It gets too hungry. It turns to sex work because it's the only option it has. It starts using drugs to numb the pain of this sex work. However, you don't march for this life. This life is a burden on society. This life is unchristian, unworthy of your tax dollars. This life should get its act together, overcome all odds, and become self-made, just like your granddaddy. However, when this life has a new life inside of it, again, you'll march. Courtney Hood, January 26, 2017.
That was amazing. Will you send that to me so I can send it to everyone in my Discord? Please, and I think everyone in your Discord wants access to that as well. That was, amazingly depressing. But also, I think I need to read that aloud at my next dinner with my parents. Very uncomfortably. It'd be like, if anyone stands up, I start over.
Yeah, the reason I wanted to share that again, because I think it's appropriate now that we see what we see. Right? We see what we see. We see what we hear from people like our guest this morning. We see the laws and the executive orders being passed by the administration. We see all of it every single day. It's not new. It's not new. I don't know what people are going to need to see for things like what we fight against every single day. What more? What's it going to take? What's it going to take? How much suffering is there? How many lives have to be lost? How many lies have to be told? How many Rodrigos or Justins do we have to have in these conversations for them to finally get it? It bothers me, in case you didn't know, it bothers me when we diminish people like it's candy. Like we just assault women like it's no big deal. Like we can take away the rights of every marginalized community out there. It is so disturbing to me that it perpetuates, and then we have people celebrating it. Why? We talk about the expectation that many people on the right have now, you'll see this in a lot of lives, is that why can't we just get along? That's why we can't get along. That's why. We can't get along because the president is blaming the victims of the bombings for being bombed. We can't get along because the people that voted for him are the ones that are being harmed the most by these fucking tariffs. We can't get along because they're raising the prices on pharmaceuticals for seniors. We can't get along because they're taking away the $5 cap on bank charges for the rest of us. We can't get along because they're jacking up housing costs so none of us can live. That's why we can't get along, because you voted for it.
We don't have any budget for healthcare, but we always have budget for billionaires to get tax cuts. Use your brains. You're being robbed. That's why we can't get along.
That's why we can't get along. If you want to keep asking why, that's why. That's why we can't get along. Simple protections. We know from the budget bill, okay? We know from the budget bill that they can't cut unless they cut Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. We know it. It's a maths problem. You can't sit there and say all these savings that you were promised. Where's your Doge check? Felice, did you get yours? They were supposed to be mailed on February 30th.
Coming right now. It's in the mail, right?
Yeah. They were supposed to be mailed on February 30th.
So do women get them, or we don't deserve them? We have tiny brains.
Only 80 cents on the dollar. Your check would be 80 cents on the dollar.
That's true. That's the correct math, I believe. That's the gender equality up in like wages. And that's true. I can't remember what it actually is, but for white women, I think it's like 80 something cents on the dollar for every dollar a white man makes. And then for black women and indigenous women, it's much lower.
And we treat this time in our history like, the Constitution is being torn apart every single day in front of us. And I know you've had many conversations when you were debating more, Felice, about constitutionalists, right? They're my favorite, second, followed closely by libertarians. Those are my two favorite groups of people to speak to. But like constitutionalists, like we said this earlier, how can you be a constitutionalist and support what you see? How can you say to claim, you stand for individual rights and freedoms? And literally every single day to have, including your own, to have your own individual rights and freedoms taken away from you. You think that they're just going to target, if you are in opposition to the government, you could get rounded up too, because we were told that if you participate in an illegal protest, that you're going to be rounded up as well. Do you think you're safe? Do you think your daughters are safe if they get raped? They're not. Do you think Meemaw and Peepaw and your family are going to, do you think their Social Security is going to be secured? Do you think when you lose your job and you lose your insurance that Medicaid is going to be there to pick up the pieces? Is that what you think? You're wrong. You're wrong. People are going to lose their lives because of billionaires. Because of the billionaire class, Christian nationalism, and fascism. Oh, and Nazis too. I'll throw them in there. I'm sorry, I'll get off my horse.
Well, and it's like whenever you debate a constitutionalist, it would be like, here's my one obscure weird thing, like of my example of liberals violating the Constitution. And it's something so weird. And like, hey, I could debate you on whether or not that's true, but let me help you. Let's say that is true. Then if you're saying you have a problem with the violation of the Constitution, follow that line of logic, and you must not support Donald Trump, right? You must be in the streets protesting against him, but they never are. And right there, it invalidates your argument. You cannot care about the Constitution and logically support Donald Trump. Those two things are ideologically, logically, reasonably opposed.
Yeah, and then everything, of course, that we choose to believe, right, is rooted in fact and or research. It's not propaganda, right? Another example is the gaslighting that we get from the administration, right? So I want to play some sound from Stephen Miller, because we know that the Salvadorian president is either en route or is already there. This is what Stephen Miller, who's, of course, always speaks the truth, has said about his visit.
Don't have to bring him back home, but will you?
So I want to correct, I hate to do it, Bill, but I got to correct you on every single thing that you said, because it was all wrong. First, we won the Supreme Court case. clearly 9-0, a district court judge said unconscionably that the president and his administration have to go into El Salvador and extradite one of their citizens, an El Salvadorian citizen, so that would be kidnapping, that we have to kidnap an El Salvadorian citizen against the will of his government and fly him back to America, which would be an unimaginable act, an invasion of El Salvador's sovereignty. So he appealed to the Supreme Court, and it said clearly, no district court can compel the president to exercise his Article 2 foreign powers in any way whatsoever.
That is not what the Supreme Court ruled. The Supreme Court supported the district court's judge's opinion, just clarified that says the Trump administration has to facilitate the return of an American citizen.
DOJ called me after that Supreme Court ruling, and they said, this is amazing. We won this case 9-0. We are in excellent standing here. So this has been portrayed wrong for 72 hours in the media. They said the most a court could ever compel you to do would be to facilitate return, which would basically mean if El Salvador voluntarily sends him back, we wouldn't block him at the airport. We would put him back into ICE detention, and then he would be deported either back to El Salvador or somewhere else. The Supreme Court said that is the most the government can be expected to do. So we won the case handily.
Oh my God.
The misreporting on this has been atrocious.
Okay,
Secondly,
I appreciate
he was
the
not, no, Bill, it's important. He was not mistakenly sent to El Salvador.
Okay, so do you still
He's
believe
an illegal
he is a
alien
member of
The
from El
DOJ
Salvador.
testified he was mistakenly sent to El Salvador.
Exactly.
And, I never believed in reincarnation until Stephen Miller. Like, that is Joseph Goebbels reincarnated.
Abso-fucking-lutely. I was going to say exactly that. That is Yahtzee propaganda in the White House. The Trump administration and the DOJ, they both admitted that they sent him there without cause, that they made the mistake. And here we are again.
In 2019, he was ordered deported. He has a final removal order from the United States. These are things that no one disputes. Where is he from? El Salvador. Where is he a resident and citizen of? El Salvador.
Never happened.
Illegally. Yes.
The exact opposite happened.
Order? Yes.
It's exactly right. Do you want to unpack that a little bit?
Yeah.
The exact.
Oh, I know I've read every document about this case. Let me help you. This man, like his parent, he was from El Salvador. His mother had a pupusa stand. They were threatening both him and his brother. They were extorting the parents and saying, either you join our gang or we're going to unalive your brother. We're going to extort your parents. And so finally they told, Armando Abrego Garcia to flee, right? In 2016, he crossed the border illegally, right? Never heard from again until 2019 in Prince George's County, Maryland. He was outside a Home Depot looking for work, right? There were 3 other people with him. One was probably a confidential informant. Detective approaches them, right? And anyways, they're all detained. This confidential informant says that Armando Abrego Garcia is in a New York gang. It turns out, upon investigation, he has never entered the state of New York in his life. And the only other evidence that he had any affiliation to a gang was that he had a Chicago Bulls jersey on. So actually, they all doubted anything about whether or not he was in his gang. The courts did. The only time I don't even know. I mean, Stephen Miller is completely lying, but JD Vance was online and was dragged offline for lying. He's a lawyer beholden to the ethics of the bar, saying he was a convicted gang member. He had a bond hearing for whether or not he could wait for his day in front of an immigration judge in custody or outside of custody. And just so anyone knows, immigration court is not criminal court. There are different standards, right? You have less rights in immigration court. So the judge just basically said, hey, there's this CI who may have given credible information before, so you just wait in custody because he says you're a gang member. He waited for a year. He had his day in court in front of a real federal immigration judge, and that immigration judge ruled and said, you have testified credibly. Your witnesses have testified credibly. Your life is in danger. The only place the U.S. can never send you back to is El Salvador. That was the ruling, that he could never be returned by the United States to El Salvador. And Pam Bondi and the DOJ said, we made a mistake. We should not have sent him there.
Yep.
Period. That is what they said. And that, I mean, look at Joseph Goebbels reincarnated Stephen Miller. Look at him go. What in the F is he talking about?
Like that sound we played earlier about Ted Koppel and Sean Hannity, same example. You don't like us. Yeah, because you're really good at what you do and you're allowing that platform. He literally lied about everything that he said. The Supreme Court
the latest on his return.
Favor.
Yeah, it's not good for his return. Like, I just want to be clear. Yeah, like in my mind, the Supreme Court ruling was a stall tactic, right? Like, I think the conservative Supreme Court is giving Trump outs, right? They said you need to facilitate his return, not effectuate. And like the loophole the Trump administration is using and saying is no U.S. court, federal or even the Supreme Court can order a sovereign country can effectuate foreign policy. You can't order another country to return someone. And that is the loophole they're using. And under this logic, they could disappear U.S. citizens. Once they get you off U.S. soil, say Guantanamo Bay, nobody can return you from non-U.S. soil. That is the line of logic they're trying to use. And what we have to see is the Supreme Court going to do something, a corrective action in any way? Bukele will be here today, or if he's not already in the White House sitting next to Trump, he's here and could have brought that guy. We're paying them $6 million a year to house people. It's not like we deported him. We're paying them to house people in a labor camp.
Not only, I mean, it's one thing to say that the Supreme Court can pass. I mean, I think the Trump administration has proven that they don't even really care what the courts are saying. So, I mean, even there's got to be some enforcement mechanisms. Now, I know you wanted to get into the to the military and border activity specifically as it relates to the future of martial law. Do you want to talk about that now? We've got a little time left before we end today. You want to get into that?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I can talk about it. Let me pull it up. Actually,
everybody, please keep we almost to 7,000. Let's see if we can get Felice to 7,000 while she's pulling that up. And we're almost at 5. Let's go there, friends. Again, if anybody's still interested, please consider subscribing at factsomatter.site. You can also find the link in the Facts HQ. While you're over there, pick up some new merch because there's some really cool items. What we're talking about is that there's a story about how the Trump administration is authorizing the use of the military along the border. But
he's annexing federal land. Exactly. And so basically he's violating posse comitatus, the PTA, the Posse Comitatus Act. Like, you were not allowed to raise the American military and turn it on the American people. You're not allowed to use the American military on U.S. soil. And Trump is now very much violating that in a very scary way. And I mean, this is the next step. This is literally the baby step before martial law. Before using the Insurrection Act. This is the literal mini stepping stone before he just declares the Insurrection Act and martial law. Listen, this is from a immigration lawyer who works in a think tank. Listing all of Trump's emergency abuses Trump's abuses of emergency powers would make this thread far too long. But the country is still reeling from the latest one. Emergency tariffs imposed, right? And that's one thing. The abuse of the Alien Enemies Act, but let's talk about this newest one. Trump wants to step up the use of federal troops at the border who are currently working logistical support to the DHS, but using them to arrest or detain migrants would be illegal under the Posse Comitatus Act. The Posse Comitatus Act prohibits federal troops from enforcing domestic law unless there's a statute that allows it. It's a critical check on presidential power for an obvious reason. An army turned inward can quickly become authoritarian. Sorry, I lost my place. Sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, an army turned inward can quickly become an instrument of tyranny. One way around the Posse Comitatus Act is the Insurrection Act, which allows the president to deploy troops to quell civil unrest or enforce the law in a crisis. Trump has indicated that he might. Right. But in the meantime, and I mean, he might soon, in the meantime, if you don't know, he's having the military come up with a report that's basically going to say on April 20th that there's an invasion on U.S. soil. And then he very well may declare use the Insurrection Act. There's a little known loophole in the Posse Comitatus Act. This is the fascinating part, called the military purpose doctrine. Basically, if the military's action have a primarily military purpose, they don't violate the Posse Comitatus Act, even if they have an incidental law enforcement benefit. The quintessential example of the military purpose doctrine is when military arrests someone who is like come onto a military base without authorization and holds that person until civilian law enforcement can arrive. The purpose of the arrest and temporary detention in that scenario isn't primarily law enforcement. It's to protect the base, the soldiers, and any classified information or material that the personnel could otherwise access. So the administration is now planning to turn literally hundreds of miles, Arizona's one of these places, of the border into a military installation by invoking an emergency power that allows federal lands to be transferred to the Department of Defense. That way, now listen to this. When migrants try to cross the border on those lands, and you have to, they won't just be violating immigration laws anymore, which is a misdemeanor. They will be trespassing on a military installation, something that normally triggers the military purpose doctrine and sidelines the Posse Comitatus Act. That is the loophole. Yep. The Posse Comitatus Act isn't the only law potentially being circumvented. Trump's order is also an end run around a law that requires congressional authorization for the Defense Department to take control of federal lands, except in time of war or national emergency. And that's why he keeps declaring emergencies. What's the emergency being invoked? Trump is relying on his January 20th proclamation of a national emergency at the southern border, in which he asserted that unlawful migration and illicit substance trafficking constituted an invasion and that our southern border is overrun. On March 2nd, Trump proudly posted on social media that the invasion of our country is over. This week, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem bragged that the unlawful border crossings are at their lowest level in decades. This is the emergency on which Trump is now relying, and they are. Exactly. We had on average, I think we had 155,000 encounters in the month of March. We had 7,900 in March.
Exactly. So
there's no national emergency.
I'm glad you brought up that point, because I think that is exactly the point here. So on Inauguration Day, he gave his Department of Defense and Department of Homeland Security 90 days. 90 days would be April the 20th. So that's that report. So they're going to come out and they're going to say that there's this massive invasion. But meanwhile, over the last month, they've declared there is no invasion, that they've got the border under control, that they've stopped the Biden open border policies. So then what's the argument? So remember, when he used words in that one particular speech, illegal invasion and invasion 19 times, that is to attempt to justify what he's doing, the ability to use the Alien Enemies Act, the ability to use the Insurrection Act, and ultimately a violation of Posse Comitatus. But
an idiot in the comments named MAGA Leftist Fact said that cartels operate in all 50 states.
Right. Yep. They're next door. They operate. They operate right next door.
Yeah, I could give you the legal precedent. That's why Kristi Noem's the head of DHS. She called up the South Dakota National Guard, which is the easiest way to call up the American military, is to mobilize the National Guard. How did she do it? She lied and said, which has been disproven, she's no longer allowed on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. It's the second largest reservation behind Window Rock, the Navajo Reservation in the Four Corners area. They claimed that Pine Ridge was a forward military operating base for the cartel invasion. So, MAGA leftists, you're actually an idiot. This has been disproven. That just believes this rhetoric, and you're actually you're parroting propaganda that is in fact not true. That's not based in fact. That's feelings that they told you. I just gave you the numbers. The average month over for the last few years has been 155,000 encounters in March at the U.S. border. They're down to 7,500 for the month. It's literally non-existent. There is no invasion. And now I'm talking about data, not your feelings, not if you see too many brown people and they make you feel uncomfortable. Those are different things. I'm talking about actual data.
MAGA leftist, this is for you.
I'm going to come.
So, MAGA leftists, no, they don't operate in all 50 states. You are imagining this to justify your hatred towards brown people. Okay, what you are failing to uncover in this conversation is that the president of the United States is violating the Constitution at every single turn, and because you've been told to hate brown people, members of LGBTQIA, and women so much that you'll ignore that. That's why we tell you that you're in a cult, my guy. That's the reason we tell you. No, the cartels are not operating in all 50 states. No.
And let me draw the line of logic.
Go ahead.
If a gang, let me help you with actual definitions and facts, not your feelings, right? Because you're like, I like this because they're targeting brown people. A gang, the definition is any 3 or more people with a common purpose. So now you're saying, right, Trump's no longer in power. Now there's a leftist president. Who could gangs be? Who could be operating in all 50 states? I don't know. The Proud Boys? Neo-schmazis, right? Like, draw the line of logic out. Do not be ignorant and understand. No, if you respect the Constitution, none of this is okay. Right? Anyone whose feet are on U.S. soil gets due process, period. You don't have to be a citizen if you understand the Constitution. If you're on vacation from France to take your kids to Disney World, you get due process. Would you like to be on your sad vacation in Cancun, the only one you could afford at an all-inclusive 1-star resort, and you do something wrong and then you're jailed for life? And not just in Mexico, they mail you to another state, never to be heard from again. No, that's how due process works. If your feet are on U.S. soil, you have a right to defend yourself in court. We have to support that for every person, or we are degrading our own constitutional rights. Same thing with what we are talking about now. Just because right now you're like, oh, I love this. I feel like brown people have my money, which they don't, and it's idiotic. But this same line of logic will then be used to target who I assume you may be later.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, again, mega leftists. I mean, I would just like you to ask, maybe the question that you should be asking to say, I believe that the cartels are operating all 50 states. I'm going to go out and verify so that I can have a conversation where I don't look like a total fucking idiot, as opposed to just spewing nonsense. This is where we are, though, right? With your confirmation bias and your cognitive dissonance. Remember, don't forget, remember this, MAGA leftists.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs.
Remember, right? It's not exactly coming to you from a place of factual information. Speaking of that, I'd like to play some sound from our guy so that we can remind people like MAGA leftists who they're talking about here, who they're supporting, I should say.
The mentally insane asylums were closed. They used to go crazy when I talk about Hannibal Lecter, the late, great Hannibal Lecter, right? Silence of the Lambs. The fake news would say, why does he talk about that? He's a fictional character. He's actually not. We have many of them that came across the board.
He's actually not a fictional character? Okay.
But when the people went to the voting booth, then we understood why.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What were you going to say something?
I have a theory I'd like to present. I've long thought that actually Trump doesn't understand the difference between claiming asylum and insane asylums.
Oh, he doesn't. I agree. Oh, I agree.
He talked about that because they voted for us. They said, we don't want Hannibal Lecter in our country. The great Hannibal Lecter. He was a very important force. But the press would go absolutely crazy if I mentioned Hannibal Lecter's name because they said he's a fictional character. No, but it was making a point. And the point is they're emptying mental institutions and insane asylum. Not anymore. They're not.
Thinks that's
insane
what asylum
asylums
is.
Into our country. We had numbers, the likes of which nobody's ever seen anything like it. Other countries, I deal with other countries all the time. I am right now on tariffs. They want to make a deal with us.
Pivot.
We don't necessarily want to make a deal with them. We're happy the way we are.
And all of that is unconfirmed. I just want you to know, as a historical researcher, do you know how many times since 2015 they've tried to ask Trump or anyone that works for the Trump campaign to cite any source of that happening from Africa, from South America, from Central America, and never has a source been provided because it is in fact not happening. And anybody could Google that. That is a basic. You don't have to be a researcher to figure that out. But MAGA's just stealing my money and they're pouring in here. They're not mathematically. Even before Trump was president, they weren't. From June 2024 to December 2024, that was the largest reduction. We reduced encounters at the border, thanks Joe Biden, by 75%. The problem was already contained, which I could get into that. I don't agree with that. By the time before Trump was president, if you could if you could do math and look up data, but you cannot. But and the problem with that is the next argument is now we've bitten off our nose to spite our face, right? Now we are actually going to go in a recession because you guys are convinced that brown people have your money, what in fact billionaires do. We are going to cut off the labor our economy a lot relies on, and not just that. In 2023, undocumented immigrants paid $98 billion into our retirement, into Social Security and Medicare, and now Elon Musk has bullied. They literally dragged a man out of his office because he was trying to, if you don't know this, they physically dragged a man out of his office who was trying to stop them from giving IRS data to Doge. And you know who's never going to pay taxes again? That $98 billion that was helping us all retire, that they were never going to take back from us, gone. You guys can't do math, you can't read, and you've bitten off your nose to spite your face. And we're all in the same lifeboat, drowning together because you all are idiots. And I'm a teacher. I am the nicest person. I can't be nice anymore. I'm just going to have to speak to you plainly as an adult. That is the situation you have put us all in. You are going to drown as well.
You saw the movie The Silence of the Lambs, I'm assuming. You've seen that movie, right, Felice?
Of course.
Yeah, so the MAGA crying Felice. I changed the line.
I know. People used to do that to me. No, I know. People did that to me because I sound like Clarice.
Well, not only the part about the Social Security Administration, but a lot of people who were eligible to pay into Social Security benefits were concerned about the IRS having their information because they were told it was secure and then not potentially transferred over to ICE and or other immigration officials, which would then lead to their deportation. So now that's gone too, right? So listen, how do I want to say this? At some point, the rooster's going to come home to roost, and the rooster's here. You believe that Elon Musk was a root out all this government. He's changed his projection from $2 trillion down to $150 billion. And we still don't have receipts as to what that number looks like. There's a video on my channel of this woman doing this amazing breakdown about claiming that there's all this fraud when these contracts were already signed into law because Congress holds the checkbook, the House, where the monies are already paid out. You believe that. You believe that they're eating the dogs. You believe that there's all this waste, fraud, and abuse. You believe that the military can show up on U.S. soil. You believe that brown-skinned people are taking over your world. You believe you're being indoctrinated by the LGBTQIA community when, in fact, it's your own predatory people. Projections always coming from inside the house. So when the fuck are you going to wake up? You now believe, apparently, that even though there's irrefutable evidence of Russian election interference, that it was propaganda initiated by the left. Forgot all about that. That was 4 hours ago. Fucking crazy. Anyway, I think that might be a good place to wrap. Is there anything else that you wanted to?
Yeah, I just want to say one more thing because someone said, and they blame it all on Joe Biden. I just want to be clear because this is another. I mean, again, simple data research can help you with this. Hey, the cover of The Economist, what we all thought, people with brains that can do research, our worry was not that Trump was going to crash the economy. He inherited a bull market. One of the envy
Absolutely.
of the market was the envy of the world. He inherited an economy. Manufacturing was booming. I was showing how manufacturing has crashed under Trump, the exact opposite of what he claims, right? He inherited the best recovered economy in the G7 from Joe Biden. What we all thought was going to happen, what economists thought was he was just going to take credit for all of it. And it was going to be awful. This is what we call ballistic podiatry, a self-inflicted wound. If you believe the lie that Joe Biden did this, then that's not the truth. That just means you can't find your way out of a paper bag. Basic Google searches will show you that he inherited a bull market, one of the best markets. All projections were that the economy will expand, not contract. Right? Manufacturing jobs would increase, not decrease. Inflation was bullish, but it was going down. Everything is now the opposite. Trump did not have to do any of this to us. Period.
Nope.
He did it out of greed and market manipulation.
He's blinked every time the tariffs are rolled out. He's pulled back lumber and auto parts from Mexico. He's pulled back minerals. He's now pulled back. You tariff a country to say you're going to be tough on them, and then you remove the tariffs of the items that we buy the most of. Electronics, phones, chips, things like that. So China is just laughing. Tomorrow I'll get into a little bit more about how China's like, we don't need you. We really don't need that. I think it's 15% of Chinese GDP is American consumers. They can spread that around very easily. They don't need the U.S. because we are an entitled society and we have expectations that we're going to get whatever we need whenever we need it. We're the ones as consumers that need the relationship with China, right? They're going to be like, fuck it, we don't need the
Have
US
you
anymore.
seen the video? My favorite videos, I'm going to report on some of my favorite videos now, just to get back at the US, are just being trolled by Chinese people being like, hey, let me show you my apartment. I have 0 products from the US in it. How many things in your house from China? They just laugh maniacally. Or like, if you haven't seen this, the way manufacturers in China are getting back at us is now like the best video I'm going to show on my live is the Birkin people. The people that make Birkins in China, a Birkin costs on average $38,000. It's a bag, if you don't know. It costs $1,400 to make them in China. And they're literally giving directions. This is a whole section of TikTok of Chinese manufacturers being like, don't pay for anything. We'll show you exactly how to get it for cheap and who to contact. They're basically cutting U.S. businesses out and saying, here's how you go direct to a manufacturer and get the same things. I've never seen so much FAFO from China. They have nothing. They don't need anything from us. That's not true. Let me explain something. We have a coupled economy. Like, let me explain that. If you think for 1 second that we can hurt them without our economy crashing, right? It is mutually assured destruction. But I'll say this. Exactly. Chinese people have lived with nothing much longer than we have. They've lived under authoritarian rule much longer than we have. They are used to harsher conditions much more than Americans have. If I had to guess who was going to blink first, Americans can't survive without air conditioning for 5 seconds. They're not going to make it.
So true. This is I'm not sure this gentleman's name, and I want to cite him correctly, but this was a Chinese economist talking about the trade war.
To fight to the very end, because the world is big enough that the United States is not the totality of the market in the world. So if the United States wants to go in that direction of completely shutting itself out of the China market, be my guest.
Yeah, and China will lose the US market, which, as I've said, is 15%.
We don't care.
Don't care. China will use 15% of the U.S. market, and he's like, we don't care. Don't need you. We don't care. And I think that's so what I've been watching, by the way, you see the Canadian Prime Minister, who's now the newest Prime Minister. Oh, it's always been the first. Yeah, Mark Carney, the first international trip has always been to the U.S. president. Nope, he went to Europe. He's doing the tour around Europe. And again, the problem is you MAGA mouth breathers think that that's a really good thing. America first. It's what's called isolationism. It's called protectionist politics. It is going to ruin us, and you voted for it, and you don't care. In the meanwhile, the people who are the richest in our society are going to benefit from your demise, and you're too stupid to know better. Final thoughts today, Felice.
That's it. I'll be doing the people's receipts at 11:30 Pacific, 2:30 Eastern. Thank you guys for we're almost to 600K. Can we get facts to 600K really quick? We are so close. Thank you guys so much for your participation. And can I just say, I'm a sapiosexual. I love having my brain stimulated. If you don't know what that means you're attracted to people's minds, not their bodies. And I could say that getting up at 5 a.m. This was 100% worth it. This conversation for my ADHD intellectual brain, it was such a spectrum of topics. I feel fully sated. I feel this was the most amazing conversation. I love reading your comments in the chat. Thank you guys for such such a great community and allowing me to be part of it. It was so amazing.
Well, it's our honor, and we know it's tough to get up, but I don't think you sleep. So maybe there's a clone in your closet that shows up, and so they can do the live so that you're sleeping while the other one's walking. But whatever. But I'm always, and I agree. The brain thing, I completely agree. It's funny when we messaged in preparation of doing these shows, we're always like ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, all these things that bounce around.
Our phone conversations, people will be like, "What the hell?"
Exactly. It's so true. It's so true. Thank you for being here. Thank you, friends. We're going to raid Mo.